TC is good, sir.
Ordinance is here too, sir.
Okay, so today we're going to go over Sustainment Overview. It's a lot of information and concepts and generalities, so sit back and mentally prepare yourself to get fed with a PowerPoint fire hose. That being said, there's some videos I'm supposed to show you towards the end of this. We'll go over it and I'll make an attempt. When you're dealing with videos in Army classes, 7 times out of 10, they don't work. So we'll see how that's going to go. So this afternoon, we're supposed to go over Sustainment Overview. Name's in the title. It's basically an overview of the concepts of sustainment that sets down the groundwork for the rest of BOLIC. All right, so the sustainment function is a warfighting function. It is made up of the 6 warfighting functions. There they are. So a warfighting function is a group of tasks and systems united by a common purpose that commanders use to accomplish missions. There has been talk in the big army, instead of, having the combat group and the force sustainment group and all of the branches lumped together like that, migrating them over to where they're aligned with the warfighting functions instead. That way it's more aligned with Army policy and doctrine. But that is yet to become anything. So, the sustainment elements. There's 4 elements of sustainment. There's logistics, which is us. There's personnel services, which is human resources and legal, religious, and music. Then there's financial management, which is finance. And then there's health service support, or HSS, and that's going to be everything medical. Now, when we're talking about the sustainment warfighting function, there's essentially 3 tenets that we try to provide combat forces. 1, ensuring that they have freedom of action, meaning that we are a combat enabler. They are not limited by supplies such as food, fuel, or water in their freedom of action. So they can go anywhere and do anything due to the support that we provide. Next, extend operational reach. Once again, they are not limited by how far they can conduct operations because of fuel, food, water, ammunition, whatever. Everything we're doing for them and providing is a combat multiplier, enabling them, not disabling them. And then finally, prolonging endurance, meaning that they can stay out longer and be sustained longer, whether it be in a firefight, recons, whatever. So those are the 3 tenets that we try to adhere to for logistical planning in support of maneuver commanders. Now, when we narrow down the logistics section, it's broken up into a few categories. So we got maintenance, transportation, supply, field services, distribution, operational contract support, and general engineering support. Throughout BOLIC and all of TAC Log Week, you're going to go over everything but those last 2. You don't get an OCS class and you don't get an engineering class. So, when we're talking about sustainment and the logistics portion, there are 8 principles of logistics. Following slides are going to go over their definitions, but there's an acronym so you can remember the 8 principles of logistics, and they are, it is I scares I. So the first principle is going to be the most critical principle, meaning the most important, and it's integration. That means that we're combining all of the elements of sustainment as far as everything to ensure unity of command and effort. So this isn't just integration of all the principles of logistics, but it's also integration with your maneuver elements, integration with the operations sections, integration with planning and execution, because a lot of time as logistics officers, we are not invited to the maneuver planning and the maneuver execution meetings. They don't care. They're like, you're a different MOS, give us our classes of supply and get on with it. Well, then the mission fails because we don't know where they are, what they're doing, how they want it, or how much of it they want. So it's very critical that you are integrated with whoever you're supporting at every level for every operation, because essentially we are a customer service organization. We have to understand our customers to provide them with what they need. And also so you don't get fired or your life or career ruined or someone killed. But, let's take this back to a positive spin. So there's integration, most critical principle of logistics. Next, anticipation. Anticipation is the ability to foresee operational requirements, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, anticipation. So anticipation is your ability to forecast logistics requirements. So rather than being told what to do and specifically given the information you need, especially with what we call log stats, logistical status reports, you are able to forecast requirements. Now, typically, as a second lieutenant, you're not going to be able to do that immediately. You can do logistics estimates and calculations to forecast based off what we teach you in the course, but every unit is different. Specifically, when you're with your unit for, 3 months, you'll start to gather and you'll get an idea of what requirements they need when they're operating. So then you can specifically forecast and anticipate their logistical requirements, so there's no break in sustainment. And all that is basically you get there, you get a pattern developed, and you're able to provide them with logistical support in a timely fashion without having to be told so in some sort of formal order. Now, does that require critical thinking? Yes. Does it require thought and logic? Yes. Does it require to be competent? You to be competent? Yes. So, some of you may be able to do it, some of you may not be able to do it, and that's going to be the difference between an outstanding officer and a less than standard officer. If you're always being told what to do and you can't think for yourself, well, you're being groomed to be a less than stellar officer. Moving on. Next principle, responsiveness. So responsiveness is your ability to meet changing requirements and respond as needed. So how quickly you can respond. Everybody likes to give excuses and whine and complain, but when we're talking about the principle of logistics, it's how quick you can adapt and how quick you can respond to changing needs. And this is definitely a quantifiable principle. Like I said, we're a customer support industry. We are there to serve the customer. The customer meaning the maneuver elements. And sometimes they can be a huge pain in the neck and really hard to work with. But at the end of the day, it's our job. And you're measured on how you're able to perform. So if you cannot meet the requirements in a timely fashion, well, once again, you're less than stellar, seen as incompetent, and probably fired. But responsiveness. How quickly you can respond and meet changing requirements. Moving on next, a very important principle of logistics, simplicity. So, simplicity is basically the KISS method. Keep it simple, stupid. Or when dealing with mechanics, the more moving pieces something has, the more likely it is to fail or break. If it is simple, it's easily understood, easily executed, and easily refined. That being said, when dealing with operations and op orders and logistics, it is not the time to show everyone that you have a master's degree in English or that you are the greatest operational tactical planner ever. We go by the KISS method, meaning things are simple and we keep it simplistic so they are less likely to fail, because you may have a master's degree in English, but that E4 who is driving the truck in the convoy probably does not, and the weakest link in your operation will fail. So, simplicity. The ability for processes and procedures to minimize the complexity. Your tasks are clear. You've got standardized procedures or SOPs. And then clearly defined command relationships contribute to this principle, meaning there's no vagueness of who supports who and whose job is what. There's very clear duties and responsibilities in the chain of supply and in the chain of command. So there's no gray area, so everyone knows what their job is and how they're doing it. That's the essence of simplicity. All right, principle of economy. Principle of economy is essentially getting the most bang for your buck. So you're using all of your resources in an efficient manner to employ all assets to achieve the greatest effect possible. So you're not using more than what you need and you're not using less than what you need. You've got just the right amount of resources to exercise the mission. Why is the principle of economy important? Well, a lot of people in logistics, will try to overcompensate for their planning, meaning you say you have 8 fuelers that are going on a convoy to deliver fuel, but based on the log stats and the numbers you've crunched, your customer only needs 4 fuelers. So you're wasting resources, you're endangering soldiers' lives, you're wasting fuel and time to send out more resources than what you need for a large convoy in case you're bad at doing your job. And plus, if that convoy gets attacked, per se, you've just instantly eliminated every fueling asset that you would have at your disposal. So, economy pairs with proper planning and tactical response and the proper utilization of resources. Rodriguez, I see your comment. Not really looking at fraud, waste, and abuse, more of planning and implementing of resources. So when I think of fraud, waste, and abuse, I think of budget and ordering class 9 and needlessly using or giving things, like doing a ammunition burn on a range after the range is done. For this, the principle of logistics, we're thinking bigger picture as far as planning operations and execution, whether it be not wasting soldiers' time, not sending too many soldiers or trucks on a mission, or too little. So we're thinking real big picture here. And that's kind of the most with all of these. Most of these are geared towards a planning aspect with how you're going to be working with the maneuver force that you're supporting. So like the next one, survivability. Survivability is going to be the ability for your plan to survive whatever elements are out there. Survivability often pairs with simplicity. And you guys will see it. When we get more into your group projects and your tactical planning exercises, you'll see what we're talking about. A lot of times in BOLIC, people will take way too much stuff on a convoy. They'll overplan, they'll overuse assets, they'll stretch the whole platoon or company thin because they're trying to do something awesome, when all reality, they're just wasting resources and wasting time and putting lives and equipment in danger unnecessarily. So we're really talking about planning here. So survivability is, your ability for your plan in planning, execution, and maintaining operations, your ability to protect personnel, weapons, and supplies while simultaneously deceiving the enemy. And this comes with using redundant sustainment capabilities and alternative support plans, which is just fancy doctrine speak for having contingencies, having backups, and having methods in place for when things go wrong. Responsiveness. We already did that. Going the wrong way. Woo. All right. Continuity. Continuity is something the Army is very bad at. Continuity is the uninterrupted provision of sustainment across all levels of war, achieved through a system of integrated and focused networks, linking sustainment across all levels, all services, into operations. Continuity in a bluff is, who you work for, what you're supposed to do, and what your job is, all throughout the chain. Now, at your level, it's the continuity of, who your soldiers are, who you support, who your hire is, and what your mission is. On top of that, if you're being replaced, you develop some sort of continuity book or best practices and follows for who your replacement is for an ease of transition. Because the only constant in the Army is change, which is why we're really bad at continuity, because as soon as we get those PCS orders or we're going to a different unit or transfer, bam, not my chair, not my problem. And, don't let the door hit you on the way out. And then the next person that comes in is lost in the sauce. So continuity is just making sure that the mission is going to succeed through clear, concise communication at all levels of war and in your chains of command. Next is improvisation. Improvisation is the ability to adapt sustainment operations to unexpected situations or circumstances affecting a mission. That's basically making the mission happen with what you have, being able to make things up, adapt, adjust. As a logistics officer, this is what I was often asked to do literally all the time. Anytime the battalion had a problem that they couldn't figure out because it wasn't in their MOS, meaning we're field artillery, we shoot big guns and make things go boom and launch Scud and kill the enemy, king of battle. Anything those rock eaters couldn't figure out, which was a lot, they immediately shoved to the FSC. And we're like, you guys, different MOS, you fix problems, you fix this problem, need PowerPoint. Great. So as a logistics officer, you will be asked to improvise and do things and fix things that are not your job. That could be having, as a maintenance platoon leader, having your service and recovery section use their 3D printer to create parts, or your welders section, your 91 Echoes, fabricate and build things for the battalion commander or the brigade commander. We had to do all kinds of ridiculous stuff. What's up, Russell? So responsiveness is kind of measured in your ability to provide, and we're going to focus mostly on logistics because these are the principles of logistics. Your ability to provide something. It's likely, quantified by actual time in response to an order or some sort of convoy. As far as improvisation, that's making the mission happen with what you have. So that's going to be more of kind of making it up on the go, making do with what you have, a lot of duct tape, if you will. Maintenance wise, it's going to be, you guys are going to be asked to fix a lot of stuff with parts that you don't have on hand. You're going to be asked to create things that don't exist. Transportation wise, you guys are going to be asked to basically respond in deliveries for convoys of supplies. So that's kind of how it'll pertain to both your classes. I mean, I can give you examples. Back in 2012, there was no budget, and we were told we still had to fix everything. So the Army had a free issue program, and I stayed at work till 1 a.m. every night, control effing national stock numbers to get things that units were putting in these free issue bins shipped to my unit from all around the country. We had to provide wrecker support to go pick up boulders because some sergeant major found a bunch of painted boulders in the woods from old artillery units, and we had to go clear trails and show up with the wreckers and cranes and pick up these boulders to go deliver them to battalion and brigade HQ to put on display. We got a CNC and lathe machine with a 3D printer and had to create parts that weren't in the Army inventory because we had Navy and civilian pieces of equipment. We had to make a mobile podium for the brigade commander so it could be hooked to a Humvee and moved out for brigade formations. In Afghanistan, I had to write doctrine on how to properly emplace Navy weapon systems and what the proper layout and necessities were for those Navy weapon systems, even though I was not the weapon systems expert. And, they're just like, well, you're a smart guy. We want you to do this and lay it out, and we'll review it and approve it. You got 30 other lieutenants who are actually MOS qualified in that. So why don't you have them do it? And the answer was, they're kind of incompetent and dumb. We'd prefer you do it. Okay, cool. So a lot of times you're going to get asked to do things that aren't your job, but since you're a logistics officer, you're seen as a problem solver, as someone who is more intelligent and competent and flexible and adaptable. So you'll get asked to do a lot of things that don't fit in the description, but you have to do because they also don't fit in anyone else's description. Combat arms see it as, we shoot stuff, we kill stuff, we blow people up, we lay bridges. They see you as, you give us all classes of supply and fix all of our problems. So it's to be expected. All right. So 3 levels of war. This is a very fancy slide with lots of words. There are 3 levels of war: the strategic, the operational, and the tactical level. Strategic is the national level that plans national strategy with very high ranking and important people. That's the highest level. The tactical level is boots on ground, executing. That is where most of you are. The operational level is the bridge. So the operational level connects the strategic level to the tactical level. Some of you will be in the operational level depending on what organizations you're in. I see some of you with ESC and TSC patches on. You're in the operational level. Depending on what ESC or TSC you're in, you could be in the strategic level. I see some of you are in CSSBs. Some of you are going to ammunition companies and composite truck companies, which are part of CSSBs. You're in the operational and tactical level because you are linking the strategic mission to the tactical level, but you're also boots on ground performing actions as truck transportation platoon leaders, maintenance platoon leaders, whatever. You're also boots on ground conducting operations. But those are the three levels of war: strategic, operational, and tactical. All right, so the strategic level is sustainment. So when we're talking about the highest level of war, sustainment level, what they're focusing on. So they're going to be determining support requirements at theater level, so all of Afghanistan or all of Iraq or Syria. They're going to be focusing on how to mob, deploy, redeploy brigades and divisions to go to those theaters of war. They're going to focus on how to get resources and supplies into those theaters. They're going to manage things like pre-positioned stocks, which we've got a few islands outside of Florida that the Marine Corps has fleets of vehicles on that are maintained by contractors. We have floating naval frigates in different various oceans that have fleets of our equipment on them, so they're ready to deploy in Pacific theater and other areas of operation. Kuwait is a giant pre-positioned stock base for CENTCOM. So strategic, big level planning and resourcing for large theaters of war and providing huge functions of mobility to get people and equipment to those theaters of war. Operational level. Like I said, the bridge between operational and tactical. So this is going to be support personnel that are doing the actual coordination and execution to get the personnel at the tactical level what they need. So strategic level is big moving pieces, big planning. Operational level is going to be executing the strategic level's plan and making sure the personnel at the tactical level are getting what they need based on the strategic level's plan and guidance. And then tactical level. Lowest level of sustainment, that's going to be boots on ground, supporting the warfighter. If you are in a BSB or a CSSB, this is you. So this is the lowest level of sustainment. Oh, this PowerPoint's too big to actually be a PowerPoint. It's a PDF, so the check on learnings aren't going to be animated to what you're used to, but there are the check on learning questions. We'll use them as a review. The four elements of the sustaining warfighting function: logistics, financial management support, personnel services, and health and service support. 3 levels of war: strategic, operational, and tactical. Acronym for you to remember the 8 principles of logistics. I scares I. All right, so 30 minutes in, slide 18 of 72. We've talked about kind of an overview of logistics as a big picture. Now we're going to get into units and the unit's capabilities. This is a lot of in-the-depth details. Just try to absorb it best you can. All right, so the TSC. As far as logistics commands goes, the TSC is the highest echelon. Okay, So the TSC is the Theater Sustainment Command. They're a headquarters that provides mission command to subordinate organizations. So they're a planning organization of high-ranking personnel for how sustainment is going to be conducted. TSCs are typically not deployed. They stay stateside or CONUS, and they do the major operational planning for sustainment for theaters of war and wartime missions. Now, things they do: they provide the planning and guidance and requirements for theater opening or going into a theater of war, theater distribution, meaning the distribution of supplies in that theater, the sustainment operations as far as functional long-term sustainment in those theaters of war to support whoever the large unit in that theater of war is, whether it be a corps or a division, depending on how it's set up. So TSC, high-ranking planning personnel coming up with operational plans and requirements for sustainment in theaters of war. Typically do not deploy. Then we have the ESC, the Expeditionary Sustainment Command. The ESC is a subordinate organization of the TSC. They do deploy. That's why they're expeditionary. So the TSC comes up with the plan and the requirements and how it's going to be executed, and then they hand the plan off to the ESC. The ESC is essentially a command and control element for the theater of war, operating under the TSC's guidance and plans. And they're making sure the people that are executing that mission are doing it properly, have everything they need, resourced properly, and the job's getting done. Then, as we go back, see this ESC? It's made up of different units. Those are sustainment brigades. That's what we're talking about next. That is who the ESC maintains command and control over. These sustainment brigades are multifunctional units that perform that sustainment mission as the ESC tells them to, that the TSC planned. So these sustainment brigades, the brigade size element, the only organic, meaning the only actual unit the brigade has, is its Special Troops Battalion, because that is the battalion that has the command and control function. That battalion has the brigade commander and all the brigade S shops. Then, depending on what mission they're performing, they get different CSSBs attached to them. Now, those of you that are Guard and Reserve, you probably know them as CSSBs. Those of you that are active duty, you're going to know them as DSSBs. We recently did a transition and conversion. So sustainment brigades became DSBs, Division Sustainment Brigades, and CSSBs became DSSBs, Division Sustainment. I don't remember. We'll go over the acronym later. But long story short, these brigades became divisionally aligned, so they now support a specific division. There were a few of them that didn't support specific divisions, that were just kind of task organized as needed. So all they did was assign them to certain divisions and change the name to a DSB and a DSSB. But this sustainment brigade, or this division sustainment brigade, only has the Special Troops Battalion that has the brigade commander and all the S shops, S1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And some other shops as well. Then, depending on what mission they're supposed to assign forward in their deployed environment, they will get DSSBs attached to them. Those DSSBs can deploy on their own to augment other units, but they're designed to be assembled to one of these DSBs or sustainment brigades to perform their mission. Now, the DSSBs are going to be made up of different companies that perform specialized tasks. So for those of you that are in an SMC or a support maintenance company, you're one of those specialized companies in the DSSB. For those of you that are in an ammo company, you're one of those specialized companies that's in the DSSB. For those of you that are in a CRC or component repair company, you're in the DSSB. For those of you that are going to a composite truck company, whether it be modular, medium, light, or heavy, you are a specialized company in one of those DSSBs. If you're going to a 5K POL transportation company or a composite quartermaster company or some other type of quartermaster company, you're one of those specialized sustainment companies inside the DSSB. So, talking about this DSB, the Sustainment Brigade, their only organic capacity, once again, is that Special Troops Battalion. They can't do their own mission because they only have that Special Troops Battalion. And then when they get those DSSBs attached to them, they can have 3 to 7. That's what they can maintain command and control of. And however many they have depends on what the ESC says and what the TSC says. So the TSC cuts the plan, the ESC maintains the command and control. The DSB is the one that actually is executing that mission on ground. Based on what those big super smart planners say depends on how many of those DSSBs are attached to the Sustainment Brigade or the DSB. I wonder how many times I can say DSB and DSSB in this class. So, the Sustainment Brigade. Write this down. Doctrine has changed. A slide deck you're going to see next week is going to have something a little different. But write this down. These are the 4 missions a Sustainment Brigade can conduct. 1 is theater opening, 2 is theater distribution, 3 is sustainment, 4 is theater closing. The missions are all interrelated, as you can kind of tell. They'll perform more than one of those simultaneously, not in any exact order. You know, theater opening, they open the theater. Theater distribution, that is them providing supplies throughout their assigned areas of operation in that theater of war. Sustainment, that is them getting the sustainment functions set up and operating continuously throughout the theater of war. And in theater closing, we're all really bad at, can't seem to leave places, is where we shut things down, bring it back home. A sustainment brigade probably isn't going to perform all of these missions at the same time. You know, think about when we opened the theater in Afghanistan. Shit, that was 20 years ago. Theater distribution and theater sustainment are what's going on now. And then we closed the theater in Iraq. So we actually got to perform that function there, but then we had to open it back up for OIR. So interrelated missions, probably not performed all at the same time. A few of them performed concurrently. That's everything a sustainment brigade is supposed to do. Into the DSSB, the Division Sustainment Support Battalion. That's what it is. So brigades are made up of battalions, right? So the only organic or actual unit that DSB has is the Special Troops Battalion, which is essentially its headquarters battalion. The same can be said for the DSSB. The only organic unit they have is the HHC, which is their command and control company. And in that HHC is the battalion commander and all the S shops, S1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And some other people like the UMT, also known as the Unit Ministry Team or the chaplain. Then, depending on what that TSC says, for what missions they're going to be performing and what is needed in theater to execute those missions, then they get those specialized Sustainment companies, I say sustainment, not logistics, for a reason, attach to them as needed to perform their mission. The reason I say sustainment companies is because we're not just focusing on logistics. We're also focusing on human resources and personnel management, finance management, and Army health system and support. So, obviously, you want to get mail downrange. Well, that's a sustainment element, and that is conducted by mail and postal platoons. So, they are in the DSSB. Obviously, you want to get paid downrange and do things like get your Eagle Cash card and perform banking operations and do savings deposit programs, stuff like that. That's managed by finance companies, which are part of those DSSBs as well. So the DSSB, only thing organic is the HHC. That's where the command and control element is, made up of specialty sustainment companies performing the sustainment functions in the deployed environment as the TSC says they should. And it kind of depends on what companies are attached based on that TSC's plan. The DSSB is the one that's going to be providing the actual support and doing the mission. You know, those are your troops on ground. This is that bridge between the operational and tactical level. This is them. They're both. Ugh. And then divisions. So getting into Army divisions. So who those DSSBs are aligned with, who they support now. So divisions are made up of brigades. Depending on what the division's mission is, will depend on what their brigades they have. There's 3 types of BCTs. We're only focusing on BCTs for this. We're not going to get into the multifunctional brigades. So those of you that may be in maneuver enhancement brigades, fires brigades, field artillery brigades, we're not focusing on those. We're only focusing on the BCT for today's class. So 3 types of BCTs: Striker Brigade Combat Team, Armor Brigade Combat Team, Infantry Brigade Combat Team. Those BCTs will make up a division. A division can control up to 5 of those BCTs. And then if they have to be augmented for a different mission downrange, they may be augmented or have another brigade with them as well, such as one of those multifunctional brigades I just listed, like a fires brigade. So, division made up of brigades. Today's modular divisions made up of BCTs. Whatever BCTs they have depends on what mission they're supposed to perform. There is the force structure of the 3 types of BCTs: Armor Brigade Combat Team, Striker Brigade Combat Team, Infantry Brigade Combat Team. So each BCT has a BSB, a Brigade Support Battalion. That is the organic support battalion that provides them with all of their sustainment and support. We call these modular divisions because they're made up of these brigade combat teams, and then within each brigade combat team, they have different battalions. So they are a self-sustaining, self-supporting brigade combat team. You know, going left to right with the unit symbols, we have, for the Armor Brigade Combat Team that's highlighted in red, we have those 3 CABs, those Combined Arms Battalions that you've heard me talk about before, made up of 2 armor companies and an infantry company, or 2 infantry companies and an armor company. Kind of depends. So you got your maneuver element there. Then you have the cavalry, or the tracked recon squadron. So they have their cavalry element that's often augments those combined arms battalions with their tanks and performs recon missions as needed. Then you have the next one, the field artillery battalion. So they have fires. They have indirect fires integrated. So the brigade has field artillery assets. Then after the field artillery battalion, we have the engineer battalion. So they have engineer assets, and those engineer assets, perform a lot of different functions. They have lateral engineering, horizontal and vertical engineering. So they do bridging and demolition. They do general engineering, so just basic construction and infrastructure. They have route clearance platoons, which augment the combined arms battalions and do their route clearance missions. They have a signal company that does all of the commo missions for the entire brigade. They have a military intelligence company, or a MICO, that does the ISR and S2 and Annex B and all the military intelligence support for the brigade. So there's a lot that's in that engineer battalion, and they do a lot of stuff to support the brigade itself. And then last but not least is where you, as some sort of logistics lieutenant, would end up, and that's the brigade support battalion, which provides all the different types of support to that entire brigade. This is what a brigade support battalion has. So they have an HHC, which is just going to be the command and control element. So there's going to be a company commander in charge of that HHC. And then that's also where the battalion commander, battalion sergeant major, and all the S shops are located. Then you have Alpha Distribution Company. If you think back to FMS web class, I'm going alphabetically in order, starting with HHC. So now we're into the Alpha Distribution Company. The Alpha Distribution Company is the one that provides the distribution of supplies to the brigade. So they've got a transportation platoon. That's who does all the driving of the truck squads. That's where you transportation lieutenants are supposed to end up. Then they've got a supply platoon that manages the warehouse for the brigade. So they manage the stocking and not necessarily the delivery, because typically the customers come to them, but they manage the brigade warehouse as far as ordering and receiving and cutting customer tickets. Then you've got the fuel and water platoon. That can either be a transportation or a quartermaster lieutenant, but since you're all logistics lieutenants now, could be any of you. They're the ones that do the fuel and water missions to provide Class 1 and Class 3 to the brigade. Then we get to Bravo Company, or Bravo Field Maintenance Company. They provide the maintenance support for the BSB itself, the HHC of the brigade, so where the Fulberg Colonel is, and then any maintenance support that needs help, they also provide that as well. Then next is C, the BSMC, Charlie Medical Company, also known as the Brigade Support Medical Company. They have a bunch of different platoons that perform different missions. It's very hard to explain, and I don't want to overload your brains with information today getting into medical and medical treatment, but they provide the medical support to the brigade. They're basically the stop before you go to an Army style hospital, whether it be in the field or in garrison. And then next is where we get down to the forward support companies. So we ended at C, Charlie Medical Company. Then we get into the alphabet, the rest of the alphabet, D, E, F, G, H, I. Delta FSC supports the Cavalry Battalion. 19 Delta is the Cavalry, Cav Scout MOS. They support the Delta FSC supports the Cavalry Battalion. Then you have Echo FSC. Echo FSC, E for Engineers. They support the Engineer Battalion, also known as the BEB, the Brigade Engineer Battalion. Then F, next in the alphabet, Fox FSC. F for Field Artillery. They support the Field Artillery Battalion. Then you got golf and hotel. Army copy and pasted here. Golf and hotel perform the same mission. They support 2 of those combined arms battalions, and they're going to support the 2 combined arms battalions that have more tanks than they do infantry. And then you got India FSC, which, as you may know, is Juliet FSC, due to that whole computers can't tell the difference between I's and ones. India FSC, who supports that combined arms battalion that has more infantry than they do armor. So each FSC has a different MTO and performs a different style of sustainment mission tailored to meet the needs of their customer, those different maneuver battalions. Those FSCs are in the BSB. So they are on paper on their MTO in FMS Web in the BSB. However, they are attached to their maneuver battalions, and they stay with their maneuver battalions to provide them with direct support. So that being said, you as a platoon leader, let's say that you're in that maintenance platoon and you're a maintenance platoon leader, or you're in that distribution platoon and you're a distribution platoon leader, talking about your chain of command and your rating chain, you're in the BSB technically, but your first line supervisor or your rater for your OER is going to be that FSC commander, the Forward Support Company commander. And then your senior rater, the most important part of your OER, is going to be the maneuver battalion commander, not the brigade support battalion commander. So you may be in the BSB technically on paper, but in reality, you're working for that maneuver battalion commander, and they're your senior rater on your OER. And then for your FSC commander's rater is the maneuver battalion commander. And then your FSC commander's senior rater is the brigade commander, the armor or infantry colonel. So you all may be in the BSB, but at the end of the day, you all work for the maneuver commanders. If you're in the FSC, the Forward Support Company. So there is a bit of a strange mommy-daddy relationship as far as that goes. Sometimes the BSB commander, which is a lieutenant colonel, will fight with the maneuver battalion commanders, which is also a lieutenant colonel, over what the FSCs are supposed to be doing, how they're doing it, things like that. More times than not, that BSB commander loses that fight because all these whining lieutenant colonels then go to the next higher rank, which is a full bird colonel, the brigade commander, who is a maneuver commander. Just for your thought process and grasping all of that. So that's what's in the brigade support battalion, where all of you will likely end up unless you're going to one of those DSSBs. Whole lot of information. Questions on this or anything we've covered yet?
Sir, what material is testable for the test next week based off of what we've gone through?
Yes.
Roger, thanks.
So there's what the HHC BSB looks like. Yep, just the staff sections. Got the battalion XO, sergeant major, UMT as the chaplain. They got all the S shops. They got the SPO, which you'll talk about more next week. The SPO is the Sustainment Planning Operations Officer or Support Operations Officer. They handle external requirements for the brigade. So the brigade has an S4. The brigade S4, who handles logistics, is the one who does the internal logistics for the brigade. Then in the BSB, they have what's called the SPO shop. That BSB SPO is kind of like a liaison. They're the person that if the sustainment equipment, personnel, or requirements in the brigade can't handle it, that SPO shop is the one that calls up to the DSSB that has all those specialty sustainment companies that perform all those crazy missions. It's that SPO's job to call up to that DSSB in the DSB and ask for help. And they're like, hey, we have to move our tanks on tractor trailers. Our brigade doesn't have tractor trailers. Can you guys help us out? And then a mission order gets cut and a bunch of tractor trailers show up and do a convoy for the brigade. But that's the function of the SPO, is coordinating external logistics requirements for the brigade. What is your question, Dodd?
Yes, sir. So my guard unit is cavalry regiment. Is it set up the same way?
Yeah, they're set up in a similar fashion. And it's not just your guard unit. Think about those poor sons of guns down at Fort Hood in 3rd CR, 3rd Cavalry Regiment. So it's a similar setup. It's just they keep the regiment for historical purposes more than anything.
Yes, sir.
All right, so next you have in the HHC, there's also the field feeding section. This is also going to be in the FSCs, just at a smaller level. The field feeding section in the HHC is where the cooks are located that does all the field feeding and food operations for the brigade. Piece of equipment that they use most is called the CK, the containerized kitchen. That containerized kitchen is basically a 20-foot container that expands and has all the cooking materials and stuff you need to provide field feeding. Its capabilities are it can feed 800 meals 3 times a day. That is one of the main force multipliers when it comes to field feeding. You should write that capability down. So the containerized kitchen feeds 800 meals 3 times a day. That's basically what you have to feed the brigade. Then we get into Alpha Company, still in the BSB. I gave you all this information in the overview. This is just a more detailed view. So Alpha Company handling all the missions for the brigade as far as distribution of supplies. Transportation platoon made up of truck squads conducting the deliveries. The supply platoon broke up into 2 sections. One is going to be the general supply section. They maintain the warehouse and all of the supplies as far as ordering and receiving and organization, meaning putting different customer stuff they ordered into their customer bins. And then the ATHP section, which only deals with ammo and the receiving and storing of ammo. Now, the name is very literal. Ammunition transfer and holding point section. They're not designed for long-term ammunition storage. They're only meant to transfer and hold ammo. So they receive the ammo, they hold on to it, they secure it, and then it gets delivered to those FSCs who then deliver it to their maneuver battalions. So not really a long-term ammo thing. And then we get into the fuel and water platoon, which is broke up of 2 sections, fuel and water. One does the storage and delivery of fuel. One does the storage and delivery of water. The major workhorses for the transportation platoon are going to be your LHS and your PLS. So don't get confused if someone says HEMT. HEMT is a family of vehicles. It is a style of vehicle. So all HEMTs, these are both HEMTs. They're just different types of HEMTs. HEMT stands for High Expanded Mobility Tactical Truck. So these are both HEMITs. One is an LHS, one is a PLS. They look the same. They perform the same mission. One's just a little bit bigger and can do more. The LHS only has 2 rear axles. That means that since it only has 2 rear axles, it can only hold 22,000 pounds on its payload. Whereas in the PLS has 3 rear axles, upping its payload to 33,000 pounds. These both take what are called flat racks, which is what's in that bottom picture, or they take CROPS. CROPS is an acronym. It stands for Container Rollout Platform System. CROPS is the same thing as a flat rack. It's just skinnier, so it can go inside of a 20-foot Connex or container, whereas in a flat rack is wider and it can't fit because it's bigger. They're essentially just removable flatbeds. So it can drop that flatbed on the ground, you can load it with supplies, secure it, and then it's got that hydraulic arm that hooks onto the flatbed and pulls it up. That is the LHS and the PLS, the major workhorses of the transportation platoon. Then getting into that supply platoon. That warehouse that I said the supply platoon manages is going to be the SSA, the Supply Support Activity. They're mostly manned by 92 Alphas, which is the MOS that does the logistics clerk and processing and warehouse management. Those of you that are in a maintenance platoon, you will figure out that 92 Alphas are most likely your worst soldiers. The ATHP section, the ones that deal with the storage and transfer of ammunition, those are going to be manned by your 89 Bravos. I don't think I talked about the transportation platoon MOS. That's 88 Mike. That's your truck driver. And then I don't think I talked about the field feeding section MOS either. That's 92 Golf. Those are going to be your cooks. Okay. Moving on to the fuel and water platoon. Fuel and water platoon's major workhorse is a HEMIT. It is a different HEMIT variant. It is a HEMIT fueler. It's still a HEMIT, but it's got a fuel tank on the back with a pump and some hoses. It's designed to deliver fuel. It holds 2,500 gallons of fuel. It also has a trailer that is a modular fuel system. On that trailer is another 2,500 gallon fuel tank. It has a pump and hoses and stuff with it too. Now that fuel tank is not permanent. That fuel tank can come off of that trailer because that is an LHS trailer. So just like those flat racks or CROPS that I just talked about, that tank rack module can get dropped on the ground off of that and removed from that trailer, or picked back up and put on that trailer. It can also get picked up and put on the back of one of those LHSs or PLSs. So you could use one of those as a fueler too. That's what makes it a modular system. That being said, I'll just go ahead and answer that whole question before somebody asks. It cannot be picked up full. They usually have to be empty or have, less than 500 gallons in them if you're picking them up or dropping them or taking them off, because the weight of the fuel exceeds the capacity of the hydraulic arm that picks them up or sets them down. There's your HEMIT fueler with the modular fuel system. It is operated by MOS 92 Fox, which is a petroleum support specialist. Those are your fuelers. And getting into the water section, we have the water dogs. The water dogs deal with hippos, like the animal, but made of metal and hold water. A hippo can hold 2,000 gallons of water. Just like that modular fuel system we talked about, it can be set on the ground or picked up by an LHS or PLS. Just like the modular fuel system we talked about, those tanks have to be empty or have less than 500 gallons in them because the weight of the water makes them very heavy and will exceed the load capacity of the hydraulic arm on those LHSs and PLSs that pick them up. Now, here's a little bit of difference between fuel and water as far as capacities. Captain Jarson, you on?
Yes, I'm on.
All right, because I'm going to need your help remembering this because what we used in my unit is different than what we teach in the schoolhouse.
Mm-hmm.
So, water tanks, these hippos, they hold 2,000 gallons of water. You can fill them up to the brim until they're overflowing. Going into these HEMT fuelers, you cannot fill them up to the brim until they're overfilling. Does anyone know why?
Who's there?
So, Lieutenant Boswell, because there's fumes?
Correct. The fuel produces fumes. So then what do the fumes do?
They pressurize the container and cause an explosive environment.
Ooh, Rodriguez, have you ever seen a blevy? You sound like you know what a blevy is.
I do know what a blevy is, sir. I got that in my training for the CST years ago.
I fucking love blevies. If you guys get done later, YouTube blevies. They're awesome. Extremely dangerous and not good for anyone involved, but super cool to watch. But, sorry, most lieutenants don't know what a blevy is. I get pretty excited when somebody does. I like explosions. Anyways, so that fuel puts off vapors. Those vapors expand. When they expand, they pressurize that container. If some of you have had gas cans where they're, half full of gas and you leave them out in the sun, they blow up like a balloon. It's the same theory. So in the schoolhouse, for a planning factor, we teach you that you can't put all 2,500 gallons in these fuel tankers or those modular fuel systems. You put, it's 2375, isn't it, Captain Jarson?
That is correct.
Cool. 2,375 gallons is max capacity. Now, don't get that confused. The truck and trailer don't hold 2,375 together. The truck itself holds 2,375 gallons. And then the trailer also holds 2,375 gallons. Write that down. HEMT fueler carries 2,375 gallons. Modular fuel system carries 2,375 gallons. Please write that down. It's not on the PowerPoint. If you try to reference it later, you won't know. Write it down now. All right, next getting into Bravo Field Maintenance Company or the Field Maintenance Company. So Bravo Field Maintenance performs field level maintenance for the brigade. Now, a lot of these things I'm telling you, you get later on in the slides. So most of you probably don't know what field level maintenance is, which means you don't know what sustainment level maintenance is. This PowerPoint's kind of in a weird order. So we'll talk about the different levels of maintenance later on. But Bravo Field Maintenance Company, they're the brigade maintenance company. They only do field level maintenance. That being said, the only people they really do maintenance for is for the brigade HHC or the headquarters brigade where the full bird colonel is, because they don't have a forward support company that supports them. They do the field level maintenance for the BSB because the BSBs don't have FSCs that support them. They're attached out to the maneuver battalions. And then any maintenance that FSC, that Forward Support Company, can't do will get sent to the BSB because that's their higher echelon level of maintenance. So if the FSC, the Forward Support Company, down at that maneuver battalion can't fix something, they will send it to the BSB to help them out. Now, when we're talking about Alpha Distribution Company, it's kind of the opposite way. Alpha Distribution Company receives those supplies, right? So they get all the supplies for the brigade and their warehouses and their fuelers and their water trucks. And then they give it to the FSCs, who then the FSCs push forward to their maneuver units. So maintenance is one of those support systems, one of those very few support systems that moves backwards, not forwards. And there she is. There's my slide. So these are the two levels of maintenance. There's field level maintenance, and then there's sustainment level maintenance. Field level maintenance is close to or on the system. It's repair and return to a user. So I say the word immediate, but a lot of them aren't immediate repairs. At the field level maintenance, it's performed by the Brigade Support Battalion and the FSCs. There's no diagnostics that really go into field level maintenance. So we don't take anything apart and fix it. It is all bolt on, bolt off maintenance. Something's wrong with the engine, you order a new engine, remove the old engine, put the new engine in. Bolt on, bolt off maintenance. It's also covered. BDAR, or Battle Damage Assessment, Repair, and Recovery, is a field level maintenance task that is essentially just fixing something on the fly temporarily. Duct tape, tire plugs, wood, electrical wire, things like that. And then any type of services or basic diagnostic or adjustments, also field level maintenance. Now, sustainment level maintenance is echelons above brigade. That's what EAB stands for, if you see that acronym. Sustainment level maintenance is echelons above brigade. So this is going to be civilian maintenance facilities. If any of you are from Pennsylvania, Letterkenny Depot, or Bluegrass Army Depot, or Huntsville, Alabama, Redstone Arsenal, those types of places, or different LRCs, logistics readiness centers, as well as those specialized maintenance units in the sustainment brigades. Those all perform sustainment level maintenance. These are echelons above brigades, as I said, off-system repairs. So they're removing components, or they're receiving components and taking them apart, diagnosing them, fixing certain pieces, and putting them back together. And then from there, typically, the component or piece that they repair is then put back into the Army supply system. This is done far in the rear, obviously, where bullets aren't flying, a lot of the time in a safe environment. So our sustainment level maintenance facility was in Kuwait when we were in Afghanistan and Iraq. And this is essentially, just repairing pieces and parts and putting them back in the Army supply system, or full remans or remanufactures. An example of this, brigade field level maintenance. We'll say that a Humvee has a head gasket leak and there's antifreeze in the oil. They're not going to replace the head gasket because that's not what they do. They do bolt on, bolt off maintenance. So they're going to remove the engine, clean it, package it, turn it into that supply support activity, also known as Alpha Company in the BSB. And the Alpha Company is going to handle the shipping that's going to go to some sustainment level maintenance facility. From there, some mechanics are going to take the engine apart, rebuild it, put it back together, put it in a fancy package, and then it goes back in the Army inventory as a remanufactured engine for our supply. So that is an example of field level and sustainment level maintenance kind of flowing and working together. All right, so moving onward. Recovery. So in those Bravo field maintenance companies and in your Ford support companies, you have recovery sections. Recovery is going to be your wrecker crews. So there's 4 main recovery systems that we have in the Army. First is going to be the M88 or the Hercules. Second is going to be the M984, which is a HEMTT wrecker. So the M88 is for recovering tracked vehicles like tanks and Bradleys and Abrams tanks, sorry. And then the HEMTT wrecker is going to be for your large wheeled vehicles, such as LHSs, PLSs. They also do LMTVs, FMTVs, anytime MTV, HEMTTs, whatever. Then we have the MERCs, or the Modular Catastrophic Recovery System, which is basically the Army's version of a rollback. That's in the bottom left corner. And in the bottom right corner, we have an M1089 Alpha 1 Papa 2. That is the smallest wrecker we have. That is an MTV wrecker. That picture looks like it's a HEMTT, but it's supposed to be an M1089 Alpha 1 Papa 2, which is a MTV wrecker. Smallest we have. Huge piece of junk. Those wreckers are operated, if it has wheels, it's operated by a 91 Bravo, which is a wheeled vehicle mechanic. If it's a tracked wrecker, they can be operated by a 91 Hotel, 91 Alpha, or 91 Mike, which are all different variants of tracked vehicle mechanics. Those mechanics just can't go operate a wrecker. I mean, they probably could. I can go operate a wrecker, but according to Army standards, I am not qualified. I have to go through a school to be qualified and taught how to operate a wrecker. That school is called Hotel 8 School. The additional skill identifier for operating a wrecker is Hotel 8. So those MOSs, and only those MOSs, are eligible to go through Hotel 8 School and become qualified and get an additional skill identifier on how to operate these wreckers to perform recovery operations. Next, we have certain types of tool sets. Those of you that are going to a maintenance platoon, prepare to have weeks of your lives lost inventorying these. So on the left side, we have the FRESH, or the Forward Repair System. That is a containerized toolbox that can be set on the ground or mounted on the bed of a PLS. It's got all kinds of tools. It's got a wrecker, it's got a 5.5 ton crane. It's got a generator. It's got a small welding shop with plasma torches, stick and MIG welder, and air compressor integrated. It's a pretty sweet setup. And then on the right side, we have the SATs, the Standard Automotive Tool Set Trailer. That's just a giant trailer mounted toolbox. It's got all kinds of tools, jack stands, work lights, some hydraulics repair stuff. And then this little door that I'm circling contains a 10K generator that's inside it, so it can self-sustain its power. And then you can't see it, but on the back side of the trailer where it hooks to the truck, there's an ECU, or an environmental control unit. So all the mechanics fight for the SATs because they get an ACE and air-conditioned toolbox to sleep in when they go to the field. All right, so that was Alpha Company and Bravo Company of the BSB. If you have any questions on those units or some of the stuff we covered. You guys want to take a break or keep driving on?
Take a break, sir.
Charlie Mike.
All right, 15:02. See you then. All right, and we're back. I know you're all just as excited as I am. All right, so if you aren't brain dead yet, try to hold on. You'll be mushed by the time it's all over, I promise. So, alphabetically, we covered HHC, Alpha Distribution Company, Bravo Field Maintenance Company. Now we're on Charlie Company, also known as the BSMC, or the Brigade Medical Support Company. Now, their whole mission is to provide medical support to a brigade combat team. So they provide Role 1 unit level medical care and Role 2 basic primary care, blah, 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 blah. So that's all a bunch of jargon that you probably don't understand. So Role 1 medical care, that is at the unit level. That is a battalion aid station. So Charlie Company does not provide Role 1 medical care for the entire brigade. They only provide it to the BSB or anyone that does not have a Role 1 capability. All those maneuver battalions in their headquarters companies, they have a medical platoon. That's who runs their battalion aid stations. But say some random company, like an EOD company or a military police company, gets attached to the brigade to go support them somewhere, they may not have a medical platoon. So in that case, anyone that doesn't have a Role 1 to be a battalion aid station would be supported by Charlie Medical Company. That being said, if you're in Alpha, Bravo, or Charlie Company, Charlie Company is the Role 1, which is a battalion aid station, which is ibuprofen, water, and Band-Aids. That's about it. They are also the Role 2. So they provide Role 2 medical care for the entire brigade. Now, Role 2 is kind of in between Band-Aids, drink water, and ibuprofen, and I need surgery. It's like the in-between. So Role 2s have different capabilities depending on what the unit is. And we'll get into that in a few slides as to what they may or may not have. We'll just talk about the unit right now specifically. So they have a behavioral health section. That's going to be your EBH, which stands for Embedded Behavioral Health. That's going to handle all of your behavioral health and mental health needs. They have a preventative medicine section. That's going to be the personnel that make sure that the drinking water is safe to drink, or that the sump pits or the gray water pits and the black water pits for gray water and black water are in safe locations. They're going to do things such as tracking vaccination requirements for deployments or areas of theater. They help with the planning of base operations. So, per se, if you went to West Point and, you put all your latrines uphill and all your tents downhill, and then a massive flood came and washed poop water throughout your entire encampment, and then there was a huge cholera and dysentery outbreak in West Point. Preventative maintenance or medicine helps plan out those scenarios so you don't get what's called DNBI. DNBI is disease non-battle injury. Somebody got sick and they're out of the fight. So they also help with base planning as far as preventing illness as well. Then next you have the medical treatment platoon. Yeah, I know that actually happened to like Fredericks. That's why it's an oddly specific example. We make fun of every West Point with every time I teach this PowerPoint, because West Pointers are getting dysentery and cholera like it's the frickin' Oregon Trail because people don't know where to put toilets. Moving on, medical treatment platoon. Medical treatment platoon handles a variety of things. Obviously, they do medical treatment, as in the name. How they do medical treatment depends on the section. So, that medical treatment squad, that medical treatment squad is generally pushed forward to a dedicated area where they provide forward medical treatment, as opposed to the area support squad. They provide area support. So they're assigned a geographic area and are basically on call to provide treatment. Then you have the medical treatment squad area. That's an augmentation that's going to provide specific treatments to a specific area. And then they have a patient holding squad who their basic job is not treatment, but monitoring and bed space, if you will. Now, moving on to the evac platoon, that's going to be your medevac. They're broke up into two sections. You got the medevac, or you got the evac squad forward. They're broken up and pushed forward to handle forward medevac on the battlefield as necessary. Then you have area. They're assigned a geographic area to cover, and they're kind of on call as augmentation for that area. Then you have the BMSO. That's the very last one to the right. BMSO is the Brigade Medical Supply Office. You as logisticians, whether you're a distro platoon leader, maintenance platoon leader, fuel and water platoon leader, you will deal with all classes of supply except Class 8. Anybody want to take a wild stab at why you don't get to deal with Class 8, which is medical supplies?
Sir, Lieutenant Rodriguez, I think it's because it involves medicinal narcotics. Is that why?
That's one of the reasons. Absolutely. We don't have the license or permits to store, handle, or issue narcotics. So that's one reason, and a very large reason. The other reasons are small things like we don't have the hazmat certifications or storage facilities to handle things like blood or platelets, things like that. So it's a really more of a logistics concern as blood and medicine storage and facilities. And then also, are you going to trust your E4 92 alpha to be dishing out morphine as needed? I wouldn't. I put a lot of 92 alphas in jail and kicked them out of the Army because they were fucking criminals. So yeah, we don't have the certifications to handle narcotics or the ability to store and maintain hazardous materials such as blood, platelets, things of that nature. Good. That's what the BMSO's job is. They handle the medical logistics portion for the brigade. So covering some of the MOSs and capabilities. So this is Charlie Company, the Roll 2. They can hold 20 patients, meaning they have space for 20 beds. When you hear someone talk about a MASCAL or you see or hear MASCAL exercises, MASCAL depends on the quantity of how many patients you can hold. So at the brigade level, a MASCAL is 21 casualties because you have exceeded the patient holding facility. So they can hold 20 patients. Those 20 patients are either going to be awaiting evacuation to a higher level, which, if you're good at math, is the Roll 3 medical facility, which is like a field hospital, kind of like MASH, the TV show, not like mashed potatoes. And then, or they're returned to duty in 72 hours. They drank water and ate enough ibuprofen so they can go back to doing their job. Now, other facilities and services that they may or may not have, depending on where they're at, what unit they're in, they may have physical therapy equipment and physical therapists. They may have dental capabilities, and those dental capabilities will vary as far as whether they can do cleaning, x-ray, or types of surgeries. It also varies on what unit it is. They'll have lab facilities, and those lab facilities may be limited. They may only be able to do DNA, blood work, platelet counts. They may not be able to do drug screenings or things like that. It depends on what the unit is. And then radiology, depending on the unit, they'll have certain radiology capabilities as far as what x-rays they can do and how many x-ray techs they'll have. Talking about medevac, these are the two main medevac platforms in Charlie Company. You got the 997 Humvee ambulance, which is to the right, and then you got the 113 armored ambulance, which is to the left. The up armored ambulance or tracked ambulance is meant to be pushed forward where the fight is in the Armored Brigade Combat Team. That's why it's armored and on tracks. Whereas in that Humvee ambulance is supposed to be more towards the rear in safety because it's light, fast, and mobile. So each one serves a different purpose. '68 Juliet, so that's who's going to work in the BMSO or the Brigade Medical Supply Office. They're the one that's going to be handling all the Class 8. It says that they serve as the forward distribution point for battalion aid stations and combat lifesavers. That depends. So like in garrison or in field exercises, that's going to be who does the Class 8 medical supplies distribution plan and pushing it forward to those medics and those maneuver units that are forward. In real life, large-scale combat operations, bullets flying and bodies dropping, it's going to be what's called ambulance backhaul. So medical or medevac is just like maintenance in the sense that instead of getting pushed forward, things go back. Someone gets injured on the front lines, they go back as needed with what treatment they need. So when an ambulance takes somebody back, they stop at the roll 2 because that's, they're typically going from roll 1 to roll 2. When they stop and unload that casualty into the roll 2, they throw a bunch of medical supplies in the back of that ambulance because then the ambulance is going back forward to get more casualties. That's what's called ambulance backhaul. So, yeah, when everything's pretty and sunshine and rainbows, BMSO is going to be handling all the medical supplies and distributing it out. When bullets are flying and bodies dropping, it's going to be ambulance backhaul because the ambulances are going to be going back and forth with casualties anyways. All right, so here's other stuff. So the preventative med section, like I said, their whole job is basically to focus on preventing DNBI, keeping people in the fight with things that could have been prevented, whether it be food handling, pest management, basic battle layout, where your showers should be, stuff like that. And then finally, after talking about all of this medical stuff, we actually explain the medical roles of care, kind of. So medical roles of medical care go roll 1 through roll 4. Roll 1 is going to be at the unit level. That's going to be the battalion aid station. You heard me say before, the battalion aid station is run by the medical platoon. That medical platoon is in the HHC of whatever maneuver unit it is. They can handle basic life-saving measures. So tourniquets, Band-Aids, ibuprofen, sprained ankles. When we're talking about TC3, this is kind of like the pre-roll one. So self-aid, buddy aid, then combat lifesaver, and then you get into a roll 1 treatment facility where there's actually a medic, a 68 whiskey, where they do more advanced life-saving measures. That's roll 1. Roll 2, with the BCT or the Brigade Combat Team, like we said earlier, that's going to be in Charlie Company. So that's going to be the specific medical company. Depending on what equipment they have, they can do red blood cell transfusions, x-rays, clinical labs, some dental support, preventative medicine, and then if they're augmented, meaning they're deployed and when you learned in FMS web class, that whole authorized versus required, if they deploy forward and they have that required number is more than authorized on their MTO, they will fill these slots with taskers from different doctors in different hospitals for their deployment mission. And that will apply to their physical therapy and their optometry services and some other very specific medical fields. So they have a greater capability to resuscitate trauma patients from the Role 1. The Role 1 is important to note that they don't have a patient holding capability. They don't hold patients at the Role 1. They don't have any beds. Role 2, either the patients are returned to 72 hours to duty and they can hold them for 72 hours. If they have to stay longer, then they get medevaced out to the Role 3, the next level of care. I already talked about the other stuff. It's just worded differently. So then we get into the Role 3. The Role 3 medical facility is going to be in the Sustainment Brigade, that Division Sustainment Brigade. It's going to be a specialized medical company. We're in the middle of a conversion right now. They're called combat support hospitals at the moment, and they're transitioning into field hospitals for future bases. The combat support hospitals, also known as a CASH, were very large, very established, extremely hard to move, set up for basically FOB operations. We're not doing FOB operations anymore. We're focusing on large-scale combat operations, fighting the Russians on the Siberian tundra in tank-on-tank battles with nuclear warheads and stuff. So we had to change the way we do medical care. So they're transitioning those combat support hospitals to field hospitals, which are basically going to be a mobile tent-style hospital, similar to how Vietnam hospitals were run, which is why I used the reference MASH earlier. So that's what we're transitioning to. These Role 3 capabilities, these medical companies that are in that Sustainment Brigade, they have more than a Role 2, obviously, but they're not as good as a normal hospital. So they can do surgeries, post-op treatment, some rehabilitation, a lot of resuscitation, and they're like an expeditionary hospital. So they still have limited capabilities. Then we get into the Role 4. Role 4 is going to be an actual hospital that is in a safe place. The slide says CONUS. That is wrong. Landstuhl, Germany is a Role 4 medical capability. And last time I checked, Germany is not in the continental United States. I don't know. I went to public school in Eastern Kentucky. I could be wrong. Another Role 4 medical care facility is Walter Reed in Bethesda, Maryland. So that's what Role 4 medical facilities are. All right, so now that we've covered the whole medical aspect, does anybody have any questions on that? All right, silence is acceptance. Back on with the PowerPoint fire hose. So now we're in the alphabets. So we're in the forward support companies, those FSCs that are attached to the maneuver units and provides direct support to the maneuver units. As it's highlighted in red on that slide, yes, they're in the BSB, but they're attached to the maneuver battalion. It can be a mommy-daddy issue of field grade officers at times. From there, they provide that immediate level of support to those maneuver battalions. Left to right on here in the forward support company, we have the headquarters section, because we're talking about a company, so it is no longer an HHC. We're finally at company level, so it's a headquarters section. The top line on that rectangle, also known as the unit, represents the line of command, meaning it is a command and control element. Within that headquarters section, there's a field feeding section. That's going to be the cooks that provide the field feeding to the maneuver battalion. Then the next unit we have in the middle is the distribution platoon. Distribution platoon symbol, we'll take a look at that. So it's got a wheel for transportation, and then it's got a line on the bottom. The line on the bottom is the line of supply. So they provide supplies. So we combine delivery / transportation with supplies, then bam, we have distribution, receiving supplies and delivering them. Within that distribution platoon, you've got the supply section. That's the rectangle that only has the line of supply at the bottom. You've got the ammo section because it has a bullet in the line of supply. And then you have the fuel section because it has a funnel, which represents class 3 or fuel. Then, last but not least, to the far right, excuse me, you have the maintenance platoon. So in the maintenance platoon, you'll have the maintenance section. Some people may call it ground maintenance. Some people may call it the field maintenance section. Where you go and how it's organized is going to vary because just what it looks like on an MTO and on paper may not be what the unit actually decides to do. Then you have the service and recovery section. So they're supposed to handle scheduled services and scheduled maintenance, as well as recovery assets. So those wreckers we talked about earlier, and then fabrication as well. That's where your welders are going to be. Then, similar to the FSC setup, we have these teams at the very bottom. Those are the field maintenance teams. Those teams are supposed to be led by a sergeant first class each. Typically, it's really, in reality, it'll be a staff sergeant or a sergeant, E5. And it's a team of mechanics. And each one of those teams may be in the maintenance platoon on paper, but they are actually attached to the companies in the maneuver battalion. And they are embedded with those maneuver companies to provide them with immediate maintenance support. So you may be a maintenance platoon leader and the FMTs may be in your maintenance platoon on paper, but physically they're attached to the maneuver companies, providing them immediate maintenance support. And that can cause you some problems and heartaches too. So this is a good slide to take a screenshot of or write the facts down. So basically in the Brigade Support Battalion, when it comes to Class 1 field feeding, you got two pieces of equipment, the containerized kitchen and the assault kitchen. The containerized kitchen can feed 800 meals 3 times a day. And then the assault kitchen can feed 250 meals 2 times a day. And this is what you got in the FSC to do field feeding. Now, the assault kitchen is not that whole Humvee and trailer. It's that little silver box in the back of the trailer. It's basically a burner for boiling water. And then the containerized kitchen, the CK, is that big expandable container we talked about earlier. Here's your main workhorses for that distribution platoon. So within the supply platoon, they're going to have LMTVs. And those LMTVs are going to be what they're going to use to transport Class 2, 3 packaged. We haven't talked about classes of supply for some strange reason. But Class 3 packaged is going to be packaged petroleum products. That's going to be any oil product that is in a package, meaning quarts of oil, cans of oil, CLP that you use to clean your weapon, penetrating oil or PB blaster, antifreeze, transmission fluid, WD-40, carburetor or brake cleaner. There's a whole lot of them. But any Class 3 petroleum, oil, or lubricant products that come in a physical package. Class 4 and Class 9. So that's what they're going to be using to deliver, those LMTVs. Then we got the ammo section. So this ammo section doesn't do any storage. They just go to the ATHP that's up in Alpha Distribution Company, and they get the ammo, and then they deliver it straight to the customer. So they just do ammunition handling and delivery. They're going to have a PLS to do that with. And then finally, we got our petroleum section or our fuel section. They're going to be handling class 3B. The B stands for bulk. It's called bulk because it doesn't come in a package. It comes in a 2,500 gallon tank known as the Hemet Fueler that actually holds how many gallons?
2375, sir.
75.
75.
All right, cool.
Yes, sir.
2375, correct. In the truck, and then an additional 2375 in the trailer. So there you go. There's the distro platoon in the FSC. Then we got the maintenance platoon. So I don't know. We kind of covered all that anyways. So this maintenance section, depending on where you're at and how they're organized, that could be your maintenance control section, where the maintenance control officer would be, as well as the parts clerks who order all of the Class 9 repair parts and do the picking up and delivery of those Class 9 repair parts. And then they may or may not have an unscheduled maintenance section in there as well. Like I said, there's a difference between what the Army puts on paper versus what the unit actually does. And then we got those FMTs that are in the maintenance platoon, but not really. So the FMTs, this is kind of what it's trying to illustrate, is these FMTs, which are over here in the bottom right corner, are actually in the maintenance platoon of the FSC, but they're attached to these maneuver companies and actually with them physically providing them support. So they're under the control of that maneuver company first sergeant, each team is, and then the maneuver company commander is the one that sets their priorities. Here's what the field maintenance teams have. A lot of times they'll have an FMT will have a greater capability than the maintenance platoon that is in Bravo Field Maintenance Company, because they're designed to be expeditionary and do the maintenance on the front line before it becomes a problem and those trucks or tanks have to get kicked back and get taken out of the actual fight. That's kind of their whole purpose, is to be on the line fixing those important pieces of equipment so they stay in the fight rather than having to get drugged back on a wrecker and worked on forever. So they'll have some sort of recovery capability. If they're in an armor brigade combat team, they'll have an M88, a tracked wrecker. If they're in, say, an IBCT, an infantry brigade combat team, they will have a M984 Hemet wrecker. Then they'll all have a fresh, so that forward repair system, that big fancy toolbox, and it'll be mounted to a PLS that they also have. And then they may also have a contact truck, which is just a Humvee with a utility bed that has a basic tool set, an air compressor. Some of them have a plasma cutter in them that's attached to the air compressor. Some of them don't. And then some of them may have a small MIG welder as well. So it kind of depends. Some of them may also have a welding trailer that has a full welding shop that it tows behind it. So it kind of depends on what the unit is MTO'd or allowed. All right, so that concludes going over the types of sustainment units in the BSB. You have any questions on that material? All right, so next, I'm going to show you support areas and methods. So we're going to cover what's called echeloned sustainment, also known as echeloned trains. These are not actual choo-choo trains like Thomas the Train. There's no railroad tracks. It's just called trains. Don't get wrapped around the fact that there's no steam locomotives here. And yes, I have had a lieutenant believe that and think that we were laying railroad tracks on the battlefield for these trains to go choo-choo. So, this is what echelon sustainment is. It's basically the sustainment units broke into pieces, arrayed across the battlefield to establish a chain of supply or a supply chain. You could even venture to call it a chain of command in supply. There are 3 trains within the brigade. There are 3 trains and 1 area. So going from right to left, not left to right, I know, it's crazy. This zigzag line you see that looks like the seagulls you used to draw in elementary school is called a flot, a forward line of troops. It does matter which way that military symbol is oriented because it shows which way the enemy is. So we got the enemy on the right of the flot. Then we have the flot itself, the forward line of troops, which is the most forward-friendly area. It's basically kind of like the battle line, the line of battle. Then at the flot, it has 1 maneuver company, when in all reality there's going to be multiple. But then that's where the maneuver unit is, on the flot.
Not working on it.
Then behind that maneuver unit, closely following them and with them, is the first train. That is the company train. Within that company train, you've got some key elements. So you've got the maneuver company first sergeant, the maneuver company supply sergeant. You've got that field maintenance platoon, which is in the forward support company, but attached and under the direction of this maneuver first sergeant. And then this little guy right here, this symbol, is the medic, the 68 whiskey that is attached to the maneuver company to provide them with medical support. So basic rule of thumb, that company train is going to be between 500 to 1,000 meters of the flot. Next echelon in the echelon trains is going to be the combat trains. The combat trains is going to be roughly 1 to 4 kilometers from the flot, the forward line of troops. What's within that combat trains will vary depending on what the unit actually performs. Now, we can look at the symbols and see that it's got the maneuver unit HHC, so the maneuver battalions HHC. It's got the maneuver units medical platoon, which is also going to be the battalion aid station or that Roll 1 medical facility. We have elements of the distribution platoon from the forward support company. We have the maintenance platoon or part of the maintenance platoon back here from the forward support company. And then up here we have a command post, which is the combat trains command post, which is typically going to be run by that maneuver, or that's where the maneuver battalion commander is going to be located. Then the next train we have is the field trains. The field trains is typically 4 to 12 kilometers back. Within that field trains, we have the maintenance platoon from the forward support company, or pieces of them. We have some of the distribution platoon from the forward support company, the actual forward support company, some of them. And then we have the field feeding section from the forward support company. And then we have a command post, this right here, the field trains command post, which is going to have elements of that maneuver battalion in it. Now, here's the deal with the field trains. It varies. Doctrine says specifically what's in it, but in all actuality and practice, it varies from unit to unit. Now, the field trains is almost never on its own on the battlefield like this, simply because it is so small with so few people, it cannot defend itself and perform its mission. It has to do one or the other. It has to either be secured and defend itself or perform its sustainment mission unsecured. That's why it's almost never like this. In reality, it's either inside this combat trains because the maneuver unit commander, the lieutenant colonel, said, it's my FSC. I want my entire FSC with me so they can perform their sustainment mission. And it's lumped into the combat trains. Or it's reduced greatly in size, and most of the FSC is sent to the combat trains, and then a small handful of the FSC remains in the field trains, but then the field trains is inside the BSA. Now, the BSA is the one support area that is in the brigade. It stands for the Brigade Support Area. Within the Brigade Support Area is where the BSB is located. It's the main logistics node. So it's got Alpha Distro, it's got Bravo Field Maintenance, it's got Charlie Medical Company, it's got the HHC for the BSB. It'll also likely have the HHC for the brigade in it, so the brigade commander will likely be in there too. And then the field trains may be inside of the BSA as well. With, we're thinking 6 to 10 people, and they're a liaison element. So like the FSC Company XO may be in there with a few clerks, and they could be a liaison or a heads up element, if you will, while the rest of the FSC is in those combat trains. We're going to go through these slides, and then I'm going to play a video that's going to kind of explain it in Army terms and not in Captain Lasky terms. But that is the overview of echelon sustainment. So the whole reason that we do echelon sustainment, or trains, echelon trains, is to provide better support so we're evenly distributing our logistics capabilities across the battlefield. Now, trains, the definition of trains is very basic. Trains are a grouping of personnel, vehicles, and equipment that provide sustainment to the battalion and subordinate companies of the brigade combat team arrayed across the area of operations. So that's verbatim what doctrine says. Now, the brigade combat team normally operates in echelon trains when subordinate units employ elements into multiple locations across the battlefield. So we're focusing on large-scale combat operations on a linear battlefield. That's what echelon trains is designed to do. Fighting the Russians on the Russian tundra, tank-on-tank warfare in Siberia, World War III, large-scale combat operations. There are your types of trains and areas, which we already went over. So here's the company trains. So typically going to try to be somewhere safe, 5 to 1,000 meters out, or a major terrain feature. Now, inside that company trains, that medical evacuation team, or that field medic right here, that's going to consist of, they're going to be in some sort of evac platform. So 1 or 2 of the 113 ambulances in an armor brigade combat team. That's going to be that ambulance that's pushed forward so they can evacuate any casualties on the flot to the roll 1, which is going to be located in the combat trains. It's also where the FMT is, like we talked about. The company trains is run and maintained by that maneuver company first sergeant. It's also where the casualty collection point for the company is going to be located, the maneuver company. And as you see, we show you one company so it's kind of easier to understand, but there's going to be multiple company trains because there's multiple maneuver companies on the flot. And then if you kind of blow it up bigger, think about how many battalions are in that brigade combat team. So there's going to be multiple combat trains and multiple field trains as well for every maneuver battalion. Let's not get too big into it. So here's the next step back. We've got combat trains. It's going to be 1 to 4 kilometers from the FLOT, the forward line of troops. It's going to be in the maneuver battalion's rear area. Apparently there's some people waiting in the lobby. I don't know what that means. All right, so from there, the S4, the battalion S4, which is a maneuver person because they're in the HHC of the maneuver unit, is supposed to control the sustainment in the combat trains. The S4 is going to coordinate the logistics requirements for the FSC commander, who is supposed to be in the field trains. Now, typically, this isn't what happens. The maneuver battalion commanders, like, I want my whole FSC with me, they're mine, and they're all there. But doctrinally, this combat trains command post, logistically, as far as sustainment is concerned, is going to be run by the S4, the maneuver battalion S4. And then the FSC commander is going to be in the field trains running, figuring out the requirements and doing, the legwork and all the delivery. Also in the combat trains, we got your Burl 1 medical facility, that battalion aid station, which is run by the medical platoon of the maneuver headquarters company. We got some pre-positioned stocks for emergencies. So any kind of emergency resupply, that's going to be typically class 3 and 5. So we can shoot and move. And then there may be a maintenance team in there as well to do kind of in between maintenance. So not all the way in the rear, still close to the battlefield, but not so close that they're in immediate danger. Then we have the field trains. So we haven't talked about log packs yet, but log pack is an acronym that stands for logistics packages. All a log pack is a package of supplies that is more than one class of supply. That's it. We got to have an acronym for everything. We're in the Army. So this field trains is going to be 4 to 12 kilometers back. Almost never on its own, standing alone, because it can't do its mission and protect itself. But log packs are those logistics convoys that are being used for resupply. Those are going to be built in the field trains, and we'll talk about that later. So the flow of logistics support in this model where the field trains is on its own. So the distribution platoon is going to get a bunch of supplies that needs to go to the maneuver unit. So the distribution platoon is going to build that log pack of supplies and put them in a convoy and deliver them to the company trains, to the maneuver units in the company trains on the fly, actually doing the fighting. Within that field trains command post, the FTCP, that is where you will have other elements, the other elements of sustainment, not logistics, sustainment. That's why the S1 or S1 personnel may be there, because they're going to be covering the human resources and personnel management part of sustainment in that field trains. Some people from the S4 shop may be there. Some personnel from the maneuver battalion HHC that are going to be helping out with finance and personnel management as well. The other functions of sustainment may also be there. But that is the purpose of the field trains. They're the middle area between the BSA and the company trains. BSA and the company trains. The field trains is where the forward support company is going to take the supplies that they get from the BSA and configure them and deliver them to their companies. Now, Back behind the field trains, we have the brigade support area. That is where the BSB is located. It's going to have all the main companies of the BSB, which is going to be HHC, Alpha Company, Bravo Company, and Charlie Company. It's going to be under the control of the BSB commander. And it's going to be where the log packs are essentially built. We're doing a lot of talking about log packs. I'm not 100% why. Here's how log packs are supposed to go. In the brigade support area, they're going to get resupplied by that DSSB, that Division Sustainment Support Brigade. So they're going to get a brigade-size package of classes of supply on a convoy delivered. That Alpha Distribution Company, who handles all the supplies, is going to receive them. From there, they're going to take the brigade-size package of stuff, if you will, the goodies, and they're going to break it down into battalion-sized packages. So then the transportation platoon, which is going to be some of you, are then going to lead convoys of log packs of battalion-sized packages and take them to the forward support companies that are in the field trains and drop them off. Then the distribution platoon leader in that forward support company is going to take that battalion-sized load of stuff they received, and they're going to break it down into company-sized packages of stuff. And then that distribution platoon leader in the forward support company is going to lead that convoy and go deliver their company's stuff to each company down here on the fly. So it's a supply chain setting the flow of supplies across the battlefield to make sure that everybody is doing a small piece of the pie to contribute to the team and there's uninterrupted logistics support. Now, when we're talking about maintenance and casualties, that's a backwards flow, because remember, somebody gets hurt on the fly, they go backwards. If a vehicle breaks down on the fly, it goes backwards. All the other supplies go forwards. So those are the trains within the brigade. Now, when we get outside of the brigade, we get to the DSA, the division support area. If the division is broken up into pieces because they're covering a large piece of terrain, it may also be called the ISB, which is an intermediate staging base. But the DSA is at the very rear. That's where the Division Sustainment Brigade and those DSSBs and maybe the division headquarters are going to be. They're the ones that provide all that supply and support to different brigades. So this is where your BSA supplies are going to be coming from. And they're all going to have their own piece of the pie as far as a geographic piece of land is concerned in large-scale combat operations. So that's where your brigade is going to be getting its brigade-sized log packs from the DSA, delivered to them by the DSSBs, who are under the control of the DSB, the Division Sustainment Brigade. All right, so that's those. Now, I'm going to attempt to pull up a video, or actually, I'm going to ask someone else to do this. Wiggins, are you the academic officer?
No, sir. I'm the S6.
Okay.
Lieutenant Hernandez, sir. I'm the academic officer.
All right. Well, I don't know which one of you is smarter than the other, but what I need you to do is Google Sustainment Virtual Playbook on your phone. Click on the first.
What, sir?
Sustainment Virtual Playbook.
On the CASCOM website, sir?
correct. It's going to look like that. Can you see that?
Yes, sir.
Then you're going to click on chapter 4 like I'm clicking on. And then you're going to click to stream this product online using a laptop. Wait, nope, there's a mobile device one. There we go. There we go. To stream this product online using mobile device, click here. And I'm going to pull it up on the real website to make sure that this is the right one that you need to go over. All right. So it is. So you got all that pulled up?
I'm falling a little behind, sir. My internet's pretty bad.
I got it up on my laptop, sir. My phone doesn't work here at the IHG too well.
All right. So let's see if this works, because I got about 5 minutes before I have to go pick up my kid from the bus stop, which means I'm going to, leave and then come back. But there are other captains online. I think the only issue is it doesn't play continuous. It plays in these ridiculous 15-minute segments or 15-second segments. Do you guys hear that? The sweet sound effects? Well, it's not
Negative. No sound, sir.
Yeah, mine is like frozen.
Can you hear that?
Sir, since it's screen share, it may not actually transfer audio.
Yeah, that's great.
Sir, suggestion. What about posting the link to the video inside the chat, and then we watch it on our own time when we're picking up the kids?
I like where your head's at. Yeah, because I don't know if I played. I don't think the audio will work on my my computer as well. So I'm gonna go get my son from the school bus stop real quick. Watch the Sustainment Virtual Playbook, Chapter 4. You're gonna have to keep hitting play. It's about 10 minutes, but it's gonna explain in Army doctrine everything that I just told you. But it uses videos and a little bit better terms. It's good to use synonymously. So I kind of give you the down and dirty basic part, and then it gives you a video representation using Army terms and doctrine more eloquently. So you can kind of take the two and put them together. So I'm going to step out for like 10 minutes. You guys watch Chapter 4 of the Sustainment Virtual Playbook on your own devices so you can actually hear it. We'll reconvene about 16:10. So if you get done early, take a break, go to the bathroom, get some water, get a snacky snack, whatever. But do that. We'll be back at 16:10.
Welcome to Chapter 4 of the Sustainment Virtual Playbook. This chapter has 3 vignettes designed to enhance your knowledge on Echelon Sustainment, Class 4 in the Defense, and Class 3 Replenishment and Refuel on the Move. Please click on any of the vignettes to get started.
One of the most common ways units erase sustainment assets on the battlefield during offensive operations is through the use of echelon trains. Echelon trains are vital to the way sustainers conduct operations in a decisive action environment. Trains are a grouping of sustainment assets and usually involve more than one component of the sustainment warfighting function. Echelon trains are divided into 3 categories. Echeloning of support begins at the company, battery, or troop level. Managed by the first sergeant, company, battery, troop trains typically consist of the unit supply sergeant, company medic, and the field maintenance teams from the forward support company. Trains at this level expedite replenishment of subordinate units using their supply point or unit distribution methods. At the battalion level, trains are either consolidated into unit trains or further echeloned into combat trains and field trains. No matter how a supported commander decides to position sustainment on the battlefield, it is vital that sustainment continue to flow forward from the Brigade Support Area, or BSA, to the forward line of troops, or FLOT. The Combat Trains Command Post is typically located near but not adjacent to the supported battalion's main CP. It serves as an alternate CP in the event that the main CP is compromised, but is primarily responsible for coordinating and executing sustainment support to the maneuver force. It also serves as a focal point for all administrative, logistical, and medical functions for the battalion or squadron. It typically consists of the battalion's maintenance collection point, Role 1 aid station, and the majority of the forward support company's distribution assets. When established, the Field Trains Command Post, or FTCP, typically serves two functions. If established between the CTCP and the BSA, the FTCP shortens the line of communication, or lock, between the BSB and the supported battalion or squadron. In this scenario, the Brigade Support Battalion's distribution company pushes to the FTCP, who in turn pushes to the CTCP. If established inside the BSA, the FTCP typically serves as a liaison cell and is responsible for coordinating current and future sustainment with the BSB's Support Operations Officer. In this vignette, we'll examine the way in which 1/6 Infantry arrayed its sustainment assets in support of its tactical plan. To get started, click the Company Trains icon. Sustainment begins with the log stat. Log stat reports are collected from the FLOT and are tailored to the unit's specific requirements depending on its task organization, equipment density, and assigned mission. Log stats are a snapshot taken at a moment in time of what the unit has. The best log stats include both the unit's current on-hand stockage levels as well as what they expect to have on hand over the next 24, 48, and 72 hours. They provide planners at the battalion and brigade levels with the information necessary to forecast future support requirements and coordinate appropriate resupply of the maneuver force. The company executive officer is typically responsible for collecting log stats from each platoon, consolidating those reports, and forwarding to the battalion S4. The S4 coordinates resupply from the CTCP to a logistics release point, or LRP. The company first sergeant is responsible for collecting the unit's resupply from the LRP and pushing replenishment to the forward line of troops. To accomplish this, the first sergeant utilizes either service station or tailgate resupply, or a modification of both. Service station is a method of resupply that mirrors supply point distribution. The first sergeant establishes an internal LRP and segregates resupply packages by platoon. Each platoon sergeant conducts a link-up at the LRP and collects the supplies allocated for their platoon. This is also an opportunity to move casualties and wounded personnel from the forward line of troops or platoon CCP to the company CCP and/or higher levels of care. This method is quicker because it allows the company to resupply multiple platoons simultaneously but taxes subordinates who have to use their own assets to shuttle supplies between the company, battery, troop trains, and the forward line of troops. This method also reduces the amount of combat power available at the forward line of troops during replenishment operations. Tailgate operations are a method of resupply in which the first sergeant pushes the trains from the LRP to the FLOT. This method is slower because the unit is only capable of resupplying one platoon at a time, but maximizes the amount of combat power the unit can leave at the FLOT. Modified tailgate is a combination of both tailgate and service station methods. A first sergeant might use the service station method when resupplying Class 5, but the tailgate method in resupply of Class 3 bulk in order to reduce the risk associated with having Class 3 bulk and Class 5 together. While mission variables will dictate the method of resupply, three important variables that influence that decision are the amount of supplies being distributed, the assets available, and the time available to do so. For example, while time may not be a constraint with Class 1 resupply, the availability of fuel assets to resupply Class 3 bulk may be limited. In this case, the first sergeant should choose the quickest available method of resupply. The CTCP is the focal point for sustainment operations for the supported battalion. It is the location where most major decisions affecting sustainment operations are made, and it is ultimately responsible for coordinating, synchronizing, and executing sustainment in support of the concept of operations. The CTCP is an extension of the battalion's commander's ability to synchronize operations across the battlefield. It is a battalion-level CP responsible for monitoring both the tactical operation and the unit's sustainment posture. It is not a company-level CP for the HHC or FSC commander. Key sustainment personnel located at the CTCP typically include the Battalion S4 OIC, the Battalion S1 NCOIC, the Medical Platoon Leader, company supply representatives, and the FSC commander. Responsibility for coordinating and synchronizing sustainment operations ultimately falls on the Battalion S4. The S4 collects log stats from subordinate units, uses that information to build a log cop, which feeds the synchronization matrix used to nest unit distribution with tactical operations. The importance of the link between the S4, who is the battalion commander's representative for sustainment, and the S3, the staff officer responsible for operations, cannot be overstated. While the S4 coordinates and plans resupply, to include the time and the location of LRPs, sustainment operations must be nested with the overall tactical plan. The Battalion S3 ultimately approves the S4's plan and tasks the FSC commander with the execution. The S4 is typically assisted by a representative from the Battalion S1 section, and if co-located with the Role 1 aid station, the medical platoon leader as well. If echeloned into both combat and field trains, a way to ensure adequate representation at both is to place the S4 OIC and the S1 NCOIC at the CTCP, and the S1 OIC and the S4 NCOIC at the FTCP. The purpose for positioning a supply representative from each company inside the CTCP is to coordinate resupply for their respective units. While the HHC and FSC commanders may be located at either location, as commanders they are executors. Staffs plan, coordinate, anticipate, and verify requirements executed by company commanders. The battalion's sustainment staff should not rely on the FSC commander to both plan and execute the battalion's concept of support. While mission variables will dictate the best position on the battlefield for the CTCP, it is typically located near the main CP and 1 to 4 kilometers from the forward line of troops. As depicted on the screen, 1/6 Infantry has the typical CTCP setup. Notice the CP established near the center of the trains with the major commodities Class 1 water, Class 3 bulk, Class 7 and Class 8 spread out to reduce the risk of loss from indirect fire or a direct enemy attack on the trains. You'll notice the battalion's Role 1 aid station co-located with the CTCP. While positioning medical support as far forward as possible is essential to saving lives, the combat trains are typically the closest echelon that are reasonably free of, but not immune to, enemy harassment. Finally, battalions typically locate the maintenance collection point here as well. Field maintenance teams evacuate vehicles and equipment that cannot be repaired at the FLOT to the UMCP. The decision to further evacuate equipment to the BSA is made by the Battalion XO and should be made based on availability of parts, time it takes to make necessary repairs, operational tempo, and the enemy threat. The FTCP is the battalion or squadron commander's primary direct coordinating element between his headquarters and the BSB. The FTCP is a reachback capability that is responsible for coordinating support operations with the BSB SPO. Doctrinally, sustainment capability should be pushed as far forward as possible, meaning there should be limited, if any, capability at the FTCP. As the coordinating cell, the FTCP typically consists of a representative from the Battalion S1, Battalion S4, and the Forward Support Company. The medical platoon may task a representative to coordinate Class 8 resupply and assist with patient tracking at the Roll 2. When the lock between the BSA and the CTCP extends to an unreasonable distance, the BSB will typically establish a forward logistics element, or FLEE, to cut the distance. If the BSB is unable to do so, the supportive battalion may dislocate its FTCP from the BSA and establish it between the BSA and the CTCP. When this happens, the supportive battalion must dedicate additional combat power to securing another echelon. Additionally, the FTCP loses its ability to serve as the coordinating cell between the battalion and the BSB SPO. While this technique is useful in reducing the speed tactical convoys must travel when conducting resupply, it ultimately limits the maneuver commander's operational reach as the unit must push the capability away from the CTCP and further back on the battlefield. The FTCP then becomes another node that receives, stores, and distributes supplies, increasing the time it takes for those supplies to reach the warfighter. While mission variables may influence a commander's decision to establish an FTCP outside the BSA, a best practice is to have the BSB establish a FLEE or LRP whenever possible. The last puzzle piece we'll discuss in this vignette is the forward logistics element, or FLEE. The FLEE is an extension of the BSB's capabilities forward of the BSA and closer to the fight. It is used to shorten the lock between the BSA and supported battalions, or when the BSB is preparing to displace and jump the BSA from one location to another. A FLEE's composition typically consists of a medical detachment, recovery capability, and major classes of supply, such as water, Class 3 bulk, Class 5, and Class 8. The FLEE executes sustainment from the Forward Logistics Base, or FLB. This FLB may grow into a BSA during displacement. The method a FLEE uses to execute distribution operation depends on the number of mission variables, most notably security. If the FLEE does not have enough security to both defend itself and execute log pack operations, it may rely on supply point distribution or other techniques for unit distribution to include aerial resupply. Once again, effective sustainment begins with accurate log stats. The Brigade S4 uses log stats to build a logistics common operating picture, which in turn allows the SPO to forecast requirements and build the logistics execution matrix. These forecasts allow the BSB SPO to ensure that FLE is carrying the right quantity and type of supplies. The BSB S3 is integrated throughout the entire planning process and plans the location and duration of the FLE on the battlefield. This is all synchronized with the BCT concept of operations through the BCT S3. The last puzzle piece we'll discuss in this vignette is the forward logistics element, or FLE. The FLE is an extension of the BSB's capabilities forward of the BSA.
All right, I'm back. Did we all get to watch Sustainment Virtual Playbook, Chapter 4, no problems?
Yes, sir.
Currently watching it, sir.
Yes, sir. Still watching. Still watching.
Okay, well, I guess just let me know when you're done in the message board thingamajig, and we will take it from there.
The advance of the 2nd ABCT pushed the Arianan forces back towards the international border. Intelligence reports suggest the remaining forces are rapidly regrouping and posturing for a counterattack. 2nd ABCT must quickly prepare to defend the Baku pipeline as well as the recently seized Objective Eel. The 2nd ABCT commander has made the decision to prepare for a defense. 2nd ABCT will have to dig in and posture itself hastily in defense positions in order to be prepared for any counterattack. The Brigade S3 has produced an order announcing that all 2nd ABCT units are to prepare for a deliberate defense for the next 72 hours. Sustainment leaders are now preparing to support the order. Though the BSA has Class 4 on hand, there is not enough in the BSA to provide every battalion with what it will need for the next 72 hours. Additional materials will be needed. The much-needed Class 4 is located at ISB Giant. Time is of the essence, and sustainers do not have much time to get the much-needed Class 4 from ISB Giant forward to Objective Eel. The sustainment leaders know that Class 4 materials take up large amount of cube space, they're bulky, and can be very difficult and timely to load and unload. Planning for the support of the deliberate defense begins with the Brigade S4. The sustainment cell led by the S4 will take the brigade logstat and forecast the requirements for the next 24, 48, and 72 hours out, as well as send those requirements to both the BSB SPO and the Division G4. The G4 will take those requirements and use them to allocate the supplies from the sustainment brigade. The BSB SPO takes those same requirements and begins to coordinate the movement of the Class 4 supplies. Once the allocations are approved by the Division G4, the SPO begins to coordinate with the CSSB SPO for the movement of the materials. While coordinating for the movement, the BSB SPO must keep in mind the amount of time it takes to handle the bulky Class 4 material. He or she must weigh that against the time available to get the material to the forward positions. In this scenario, there is very little time to get these supplies to their destination. Let's take a look at several options the SPO has in this situation. Option 1, the BSB SPO can request that the supplies be pushed directly to and downloaded or cross-loaded on the BSA. This will require several things to happen. First, the space for the material will be needed within the BSA, thereby increasing the size and footprint of the BSA. The delivering unit will then have to either download or cross-load the materials. Class 4 is building and barrier materials such as spools of seawire, wood, and concrete barriers. This material is very cumbersome and difficult to handle. After all the materials are downloaded, the decision will have to be made whether the distribution company from BSB will upload and push to respective FSCs, whether the FSCs will have to pull its materials from the BSA, or if a flea must be employed. Option 2, the BSB SPO can request a throughput by the CSSB. In this option, the CSSB will bypass the BSA and go directly to or as close as possible to the flot. This will eliminate the need for additional space at the BSA, as well as reduce the time needed to download and upload the materials. This is a much faster and efficient process, but ultimately depends on mission variables and whether or not the CSSB has available assets needed, such as security. In this scenario, the SPO has opted to request for throughput of the Class 4 straight to the respective battalions. One of the CSSB's transportation companies has been tasked with moving the Class 4 to designated sites for each battalion. Typically, this would be the battalion CTCP, but throughput can go all the way to the flot if necessary. Due to the rapid pace of an ABCT's movement on the battlefield, the need for Class 3 bulk is always in high demand. The need to meet that high demand is paramount in order to extend operational reach. Sustainment planners must be aware of the tactical plan and nest it with the BCT's concept of support in order to choose the most efficient way to refuel its units. Refueling operations consist of two distinct methods of resupply: replenishment operations, or RO, and refuel on the move, or ROM. During replenishment operations, sustainment units refill tactical vehicles to full or as close as possible to 100% capacity. This can be accomplished using three different techniques: tailgate, service station, or modified tailgate resupply, as described in the echelon trains section. The first method is much slower, requiring the vehicle to be completely refilled to 100%. The second method is a time-based technique where vehicles receive a splash of fuel for a predetermined amount of time. Though this method may not completely refill a vehicle, it can extend its operational reach and maintain the pace of march. If the commander prioritizes rapid advance as the most important factor in seizing the objective, then it may be more advantageous to conduct a refuel on the move, or ROM. Remember, a ROM is a timed splash of fuel that may not bring a vehicle to 100%, but still extends operational reach. It decreases fueling time and facilitates rapid advance in order to maintain the initiative. However, if a commander wants to ensure residual capacity to allow the exploitation of the initiative, then an RO may make more sense. Unlike the time-based ROM operations, the RO completely refills the vehicle's internal fuel tank and provides greater flexibility for follow-on operations. This allows for greater range, but ultimately slows the entire operation down due to time needed to completely refuel. Mission variables, and more importantly, the commander's intent, will ultimately dictate the time, location, and technique. With either operation, time is the critical variable. In both techniques, there are inherent time costs to any refueling operation, such as moving to and from the site, time to bond and ground vehicles, and time to maneuver at the actual refuel point. The time to pump fuel into the vehicle's tank changes based on the method employed. After the operation has been planned and once the operation has begun, one of the most crucial practices that will take place is reporting. Only so much can be planned for, and in any large operation, there are a plethora of variables and unknowns that can alter a plan almost as quickly as it unfolds. This is why accurate reporting is vital to the success of any operation. In a decisive action environment, where speed and distance are the linchpin to victory, something as simple as a logistical status can be a difference between a continued or completely halted operation. It begins with the requesting unit. The requesting unit reports up its chain of command its on-hand status. In this case, the platoons will report their on-hand quantities to the company executive officers. The company executive officer sends the log stat to the battalion S4. The FSC executive officer must send both the company's internal log stat as well as the battalion's supply point log stat. The S4 collects all subordinate log stats and consolidates them at the battalion level. Once consolidated, the battalion S4 then takes that information and updates the Logistical Common Operating Picture, or log COP. The S4 then forecasts the next 24, 48, and 72 hours out. It is very important to note that forecasting takes place at either the battalion or brigade level, not the company level. Companies are responsible for reporting their on-hand quantities only. The battalion S4 is then responsible for sending both the log COP and battalion log stat to the brigade S4 and the BSB SPO. The brigade S4 is responsible for creating and maintaining the brigade log COP. The brigade S4 takes the battalion log stats and creates the brigade log COP, while the BSB SPO takes the battalion log stats and updates the synchronization matrix in order to maximize effectiveness of logistical packages, or log packs, that leave the BSA. Once all the reporting has made its way back to both the brigade S4 and SPO, the SPO then updates the sync matrix and begins to synchronize the flow of Class 3 bulk forward on the battlefield. In this scenario, the concept of support planned for replenishment operations at H+10. However, Arianan forces rapidly disintegrated in the face of the 2nd ABCT's advance down Axis Eagle. The BCT commander identifies the opportunity to more rapidly seize the BCT's objective and wants to exploit the initiative. This forces the need to shift from replenishment operations to refuel on the move. Now let's take a look at planning considerations for a ROM. Prior to any movement, the site selected must be nested with the tactical plan. The selection of this site is crucial to the success of the entire ROM. Some factors that should be considered are security, access to MSRs and ASRs, size of the marshaling and refueling areas, distance from the SP, which correlates with fuel consumption, and proximity to the objective, which correlates to future fuel requirements. Security must always be the first planning consideration when deciding when, where, and how to employ sustainment capabilities. The area selected must be defendable against all Level 1 threat and should not require external security forces that would drain combat power from the main effort. Access to the main road network is essential to facilitate an efficient flow of vehicles through the refuel site and allows the advance to continue. The size and refuel site can vary per station. However, the threat level will dictate how an area can be supported with available security forces. Additionally, because the FSCs and the distribution company of the BSB has the capability to conduct ROM operations, identifying who is responsible for site setup, management, and execution must be a deliberate part of the planning process. Timing and sequencing of the ROM operations is an essential part of the planning process as well. If units conduct ROM too early in the advance, units run the risk of running critically low prior to ever reaching the objective. Conversely, if the ROM is conducted too late in the advance, longer refuel times may be required, thereby extending the entire operation and potentially losing the initiative. Movement to the site is critical as well. This part of the operation can cause a bottleneck that backs units up, ultimately creating a large footprint that is easier to detect and harder to defend.
I think we're good to go.
To avoid
We have
this,
the link as well,
serials
so
must
just
be
in
aligned
case we
properly
haven't
with
quite finished
ample
it, we
amount
can
of
finish
time
later,
between
sir.
start times, and there must be
there's more
someone.
you gotta watch, so we'll just go with that. All right, so we covered trains. Trains is very important. Echelon trains is something that you're going to have to memorize. You're going to use it all throughout BOLIC. You're going to apply the theory in the field at your unit. When you get to the captain's career course, you're going to have to memorize it for every class of supply and every type of unit from the division to the flight and draw it from memory every week for a test. A lot of emphasis on echelon trains. So you're going to need to know the echelon trains and the flow of supplies, the flow of casualties, how log packs work, how maintenance in the trains work, stuff like that. Now we're going to move into distribution types, methods, techniques, tactics, practices. There's a lot of them. It can be very confusing on how to remember all of this, but you're going to have to remember it. So I would suggest someone create a study guide that has all of them on one page as far as the methods, the techniques, the types of methods within the methods, all that stuff. Because you're going to have to know the difference and be able to articulate the difference between them. So now that I've spoke my piece on that, let's get into it. So there's 3 methods of distribution. Now, the Sustainment Virtual Playbook probably said there's only 2. The last one we still teach. So, first one is going to be unit distribution. So that's where the method of distributing supplies by which the receiving unit is issued the supplies in their own area with transportation furnished by the issuing agency. That's basically, in an example, Alpha Distribution Company, Transportation Platoon, which is in the brigade support area, takes a log pack to the field trains and delivers it to the Ford Support Company distribution platoon. So the issuing agency uses its own trucks, takes it to the customer, and offloads it in the issuing agency's own area. So that being said, next is supply point distribution. Supply point distribution is where the supplies are distributed to the receiving unit at a supply point. The receiving unit, or the customer, then moves the supplies to its own area using its own transportation. This in practice would be like the distribution platoon in the field trains taking a convoy to the BSA, the Brigade Support Area, and linking up with Alpha Company, Alpha Distribution Company, and then getting the supplies from Alpha Company in their area, loading them up onto the FSC distribution platoon's trucks, and then taking them back to the field train. So the customer is going to the store to get the stuff and then take them back to the house. Whereas then with unit distribution, it's more of like you order something on Amazon and it shows up at your house, if that makes better sense to you. Now, the last one, throughput distribution, is where regardless, supplies are delivered, but a link in the supply chain is skipped. Now, one example of that would be the DSSB doing a log pack convoy, skipping the BSB in the BSA and delivering the supplies directly to the FSC, the Forward Support Company. Another example of that would be the Alpha Distribution Company in the BSB taking a log pack, skipping the FSC, the Forward Support Company, and delivering straight to the maneuver unit on the fly. Both of those are examples, but the bluff on that is it's just a method of the distribution where the middleman is skipped or a link in this chain of supply is skipped. Now, techniques of unit distribution. So first is the logistics release point. That's just going to be a place that's basically a link-up point, marks an area where the unit delivering the supplies will meet the customer receiving the supplies and follow that customer into their own area. Or using the trains concept or the train echelon trains, the distribution platoon of the FSC will link up with the maneuver company first sergeant at the LRP and then either download the supplies there or follow the maneuver first sergeant into the company area to download them in the company's area where all the tanks and troops actually are. You can read that giant paragraph if you want to. I'm not gonna. Then we have aerial delivery. It's exactly what it sounds like. Supplies are delivered by air, either fixed wing, meaning an airplane, or rotary wing, meaning a helicopter. From there, there's different methods of aerial delivery, which is going to be air drop, meaning it is literally dropped out of the air. Air land, meaning most literally that the aircraft has landed and it's unloaded from the aircraft. And then sling load, where it's dangled from a rope on a helicopter. You'll learn more about all of this next week when you get into different TAC log classes. If you're lost right now, I understand. Fire hose of PowerPoint information. Brain can only absorb so much. Most of this you're going to hear again. Most of it you're going to hear 2 or 3 times. So if you're feeling lost in the sauce, don't panic too much. It's a big ass pot. All right. So the next part is supply point distribution techniques. There's refuel on the move, where the refuel element goes forward in front of their customer. They set up a fueling station. The customer comes through like a gas station, stops, gets fuel, moves on, and just repeat that method. That is refuel on the move. Then you got pre-positioning supplies. So that is a pre-positioned supply on a pre-planned place somewhere along the battlefield. So it's just a planned kind of dead drop of supplies. So these on the battlefield. Now, if we're talking about pre-positioned stocks, a little different, and that's going to be the stocks that we talked about earlier. You know, the islands outside of Florida that have marine vehicles that are maintained, or the naval carriers that we have carrying Army pieces of equipment in the Pacific, ready to deploy to the Pacific Theater. And then next we have cash, which is similar to a pre-positioned supply point, except it's hidden. Caches are typically used by the enemy. We haven't specifically used them in conventional warfare since probably the Civil War, or possibly even Revolutionary War, but that's a cache, a hidden concealed supply point. Or if, I don't know, depending on where you're from, you may call it a cache. All right, so finally, you've heard the term log pack probably 100 times in this class. Now we actually get to tell you what it is. Log pack. A logistics package or log pack is the grouping of multiple classes of supply and supply vehicles under the control of a single convoy commander. The log pack technique is a simple and efficient way to accomplish routine, planned resupply. So the flow of a log pack. So the DSB, the Division Sustainment Brigade, will have the DSSB deliver a brigade-size package, log pack, to the BSA. Alpha Distribution Company will receive that brigade BCT-sized log pack. So from there, the BSB's distribution company, which is Alpha, is going to configure that load for resupply to the maneuver battalion. So they're going to take that brigade-sized package of stuff and make it a battalion-sized package of stuff in the BSA. That's typically going to be run by the platoon leader in that Alpha company. Probably going to be either the transportation platoon leader or the supply platoon leader. Kind of depends on the classes of supply and what it is. Now, from there, that platoon leader is going to lead the log pack from the BSA to the FSC. Now, what we learned about echelon trains is by doctrine, not by actual practice. The FSC is going to be in the field trains. So that log pack gets to the field trains. The FSC distribution platoon leader will receive that log pack and take it from a battalion level package of stuff and break it up into a company level package of stuff. So they'll just assemble it by companies for their customer. And then that distribution platoon leader is going to lead the log pack convoy to the company trains, where they will link up with those maneuver first sergeants and maneuver company supply sergeants and distribute the supplies based on some of the following methods. So we talked about LRP and aerial delivery and supply point. The most common is going to be LRP. These animated slides are still not going to work for us. But what happens on this beautiful work of art someone created is those three trucks in the FTCP go to the LRP, split three ways, and then go to the company trains. And then they go back to the LRP, and then they go back to the field trains. The Sustainment Virtual Playbook is much better than this slide. Then we have the resupply techniques, which is from the Sustainment Virtual Playbook. That is not going to work. So this is the homework we need to cover because I have to show you the resupply techniques. Yeah, there's the check on learning. Company trains, combat trains, and field trains. 3 distribution methods: unit distribution, supply point distribution, throughput distribution. Cool. So we're finally at the end of this PowerPoint. But I never showed you the resupply techniques. It's going to be in Sustainment Virtual Playbook, Chapter 6. There's the link. This is what Sustainment Virtual Playbook, Chapter 6 looks like. So you don't have to watch the whole chapter. A lot of good information in there that you're going to learn in BOLIC, taught to you in a different way. So it's definitely a good piece of information for you to reference and watch. But what you need to watch for this class that we haven't covered that we were supposed to cover is starting at introduction right here of chapter 6. It's going to cover the BCT logistics nodes. So it's going to reiterate some of the trains and what's in the trains, the flow of ground distribution, the logistics release points, the 3 doctrinal logistics release point methods. So true, link up, and meet up. Then it's going to talk about the 3 resupply techniques, which we have not covered at all, and you should write down while you watch it, because I said you need to memorize all of those and know the difference and be able to illustrate and articulately show that you know the difference between the distribution methods and the distribution techniques and the resupply techniques and all of that, where it all sounds the same, but it's all different, but it still sounds the same, but different. Same, but different. So you need to watch these 3 resupply techniques and focus a lot on them. And they're going to cover service station, tailgate, and modified tailgate. Now, out of all these 3 techniques, 9 times out of 10, you're going to use the modified tailgate technique. So that is what we typically use. That is what is most preferred. That is what's best for the customer, also known as the maneuver unit. That's what we use. And that's where you need to stop. You can watch the different types of aerial delivery for air distribution, and it'll be cool and you'll learn something, but not mandatory for tonight's homework. So Sustainment Virtual Playbook, Chapter 6, Intro, all the way down to Modified Tailgate is what you need to watch. You need to make sure you write down the resupply techniques, know the difference between them and the definitions, and super pay attention to Modified Tailgate because that's the one that we use the most. That's the one that you're going to use in BOLIC and in the real Army. That concludes Sustainment Overview. What are your questions? No questions. Okay. So if you don't have any questions about this, what about the group project? Life in general. Why do hot dogs come in packages of 10 and hot dog buns come in packages of 8?
Could you answer that one, sir?
Yeah, it's because we're all cheap and buy the cheap hot dog buns, so you're at least going to rip 2 in half. Got to have spares. We call that a 10% variance in the logistics world. Lieutenant Smalls, I did not want 2 draws. I just want 1 draw for the group project. And that draw should be on your platoon FTX because that is the biggest event and the most dangerous event. So just one deliberate risk assessment worksheet on the platoon field training exercise itself.
This road for me. Can you make this road for me?
Any other questions regarding the group project?
Hey, sir, this is Second Lieutenant Landstrom. I just had a quick question. Is there, and again, I know that you already went over this, but just for future reference, is there any way you can upload one of those examples to like the Google chat room so we can kind of like go back and look at it down the future as we're working on different sections? Or is that going to be negatory?
That's going to be a no. That's kind of borderline cheating. I mean, I give you a lot of freedom of movement because I want to see your thought process and what you come up with. So if I give you too many of the answers or too much of a guide, you're not going to do the work independently on your own. And it's going to look too much like something I've seen in the past. And bear in mind, I've been here 4 years and I still get surprised sometimes, especially on training management. Usually a good surprise. So no, I'm not. I won't post a group project up there for you to see. And really, all the ones that I still have access to in my Google Drive are kind of crappy. So I don't want you to use them anyways because they'll probably make you get a worse product than a better one. Ah.
Hello, sir. Lieutenant Hernandez. Can I clarify something with the deliverables?
Yep.
So in the
Not a problem.
deliverables,
Yeah, I was just for like a visual, just because I know a couple of people.
For the deliverables, we have to print out the reports. Do you want the reports printed out in the entirety or just certain sections of the report?
So some of those you're going to have to print the entire report out. Like it asks for the cat's exum. So you're going to have to print the whole cat's exum. But for the training table matrix, it asks for the specific one for your event. So you'll only have to print out the training matrix for the STX and the FTX for the phase that you're in. You remember the ready phase and the prepare phase. So when you go into that giant training matrix document, make sure you're pulling it for the right task, for the right training phase, but that should only be 2 pages. So if it asks for specifics, give the specifics. If it doesn't state, then it wants the whole report.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Any other questions? Russell had a good question yesterday. Russell asked me that there were no squad tasks in their platoon tasks that I assigned them. What should they do? Can they pick random squad tasks, or what should the method behind the madness be? So I told Russell that in any Army briefing, you're basically telling a story. People love stories. I love stories. You're probably going to love all my stories when I talk about, the soldier I had to kick out of the Army because he couldn't stop pissing in bottles in its barracks room. Things like that. So everybody loves stories. So this briefing and every Army briefing that you ever give is basically a story. There's going to have to be an intro, a plot, a summary, and hopefully a happy ending, right off into the sunset. How you tell that story depends on how well the briefing goes. If you're confident, you tell it well, you provide facts and logic, and it all makes sense, bam, great story. If it's misconstrued, and there's a bunch of plot holes and things don't make sense. And it's like Stanley Kubrick, like just made a bunch of stuff up when he was drunk with M. Night Shyamalan. You're going to have a bad time and get a bad Rotten Tomatoes score. So your briefing is basically a story. And what I told Russell is there's a few ways to skin that cat. You could take your platoon level tasks for your platoon FTX and first train on them FTX, and then inject some very, very important individual tasks as well. And basically your squad training exercise could just be a smaller level run phase for the platoon exercise, performing the same tasks with those very important individual tasks. So your squad gets certified at the squad level and it shows that you're ready to do the full platoon level. Or you could just do the platoon level at the platoon FTX, and then you could go down the unit task list and pick very important squad level tasks and very important individual tasks and insert into your squad training exercise that in different lanes. So that shows that you're keeping with the commander's methodology. You're getting creative with time. You're training on things that are still assigned medal tasks and mission and very important tasks at the squad level, and still doing certifications and preparing for the platoon tasks. There's a few different ways you could go about it if you're in that scenario. You know, if it's logical, it makes sense. You're coming up with a plan and briefing it well. You're training your platoon in the commander's guidance, because no matter what, they're going to be mission essential tasks and sub collective tasks or supporting collective tasks. Who am I to tell you that one's wrong and one's right when they both meet the commander's intent and you're training your platoon? I'm not. You know, hopefully one day you'll have a good commander that gives you that freedom of action to see what you do and kind of let you have a little bit of control of your platoon with no micromanagement. So there's a few ways to go about that. So what other questions do you have?
Logan, you have stairs all the way up here. Wow. Yeah, I'm on the trees, huh? I can go see it open. Loser. You saw us. Isn't that something?
So it's Lieutenant Gladys.
Yep.
You said only print the portions of the report that are specified on the deliverables. So on the commander's dialogue for the after cat's exum, when it speaks of the cat's report, it just says cat's report for assigned unit. So do you want all 165 pages of said cat's report, or?
So that opens up another conversation. What's the printing scenario like in the hotel right now?
Sir, there is one printer that I'm aware of in the lobby. Pretty big printer, but I don't know where they keep extra paper at.
All right. So if it asks for a report and it's a giant report that kind of exceeds reality or your printing capabilities, you know, we'll just slap the old due to COVID excuse on it. Then take those big reports and save them. And whenever you give your brief, just bring your personal laptop in and you can pull it up on your personal laptop and show me or Captain Jarzen when you're orienting us to your products per the rubric. That way, you know, you guys aren't panicking because the hotel printer broke or ran out of ink or paper, which happens all the time. So we'll use that for a workaround. You know, the draw, not that big a deal. You can print the draw off. Let's see what these other deliverables are. The CATS XSUM, that's not a big report. The training event matrix, that's going to be, 2 pages because it only wants those specific events. Your platoon Warno, I would prefer you print the platoon Warno out so I can read it and mark on it and, tear it up in your face if it's garbage.
Roger that. So we're mainly concerned about in group 2. I don't know if this is similar length for the other group, but our CATS report is about 165 pages. So.
Yeah, don't do that craziness. That doesn't pass the common sense test. All right, other questions?
Sir, this is Lieutenant Doyle. For active duty, we have 2 squad events and then a platoon FTX at the end. Is that correct?
No, you should have 1 squad event and 1 platoon FTX.
And that FTX will be at the end of the 3 months?
Yes. 1 con-op for each. So the platoon FTX con-op and then the squad STX con-op. If there's multiple ones in a long-range training calendar or short-range training calendar provided, that's just those calendars. Their only purpose is for you to plot those on the calendars. That way you're briefing major events on the calendar coming up, whether it be the quarter or the year. And then each one purposely has a range injected so you can look at and plan your range to get your platoon at 90% MTO qualification for all the assigned weapons as well. So don't let strange things in that long range training calendar or short range training calendar throw you off. Was another thing Russell asked me. 8-step training model. So this was a good one too that we didn't really talk about. 8-step training model can kind of be confusing when you look at it. The project really focuses a lot on the 8-step training model and illustrating how you use that 8-step training model for the FTX and the LTX. Now, that's not how real life goes. You're supposed to use the 8-step training model for every training event and use it as a guideline to brief in accordance with those T weeks. So, 8 weeks out, you're supposed to identify the training and issue the Warno-ish, depending. And the 8-step training model is just kind of providing you a general checklist to help you be successful for planning your training using the T-week model. So each different T-week, T8 to 0, you're briefing updates or checking blocks in that 8-step training model. But since this is more of a quarterly training brief instead of an actual platoon / company training meeting where you're briefing me 8 weeks out, 8 through whatever, T+8 through T+0 for every training event that you have on the calendar, meaning those Thursdays, kind of like we went with, we're really focusing more on your method of crawl, walk, run and how you're progressing that training leading up to your platoon culminating events, which is going to be the STX, essentially pre-gaming for that FTX. And the STX and the FTX are really where you're going to get into the planning timeline details using that 8-step training model. But in real life, you would apply the 8-step training model active duty to every Thursday on your calendar. And you'd brief me different things at different weeks. And then reserves, National Guard, Comp 2 and 3, you'd be doing that with the with your drill weekends, but you guys are a little different because you got your MUTA memos with your set training schedule outlined by the state at the locations. So a lot less thought process involved for you guys. Okay. Thought I saw a hand raised. Not sure. Any other questions? Going once, going twice, sold. We have now closed auction for questions. All right. So we can't show up early for dinner. We're not allowed to walk into the DFAC until 1800 because the Air Force complained because they're the Air Force. So I will see you at 1750 to get accountability and get rosters, and then we will enter the DFAC at 1759.59. Sound good?
Roger.
Sounds good, sir.